There's a little garage on a small town street. I like to meet my friends there every week, and I know we'll talk about some facts and things, history and science and some crazy shit. Talking it out with Alan, Ben, and Nick, and I know that it's gonna be a weird-ass show. Ooh, insanity abounds. Ooh, the world is spinning round. Now we're gonna break it down.
Tag. Ich bin ein Nick.
Ich bin ein Ben.
Ich bin ein Ellen.
And this is Informed and Confused. Today we're going to be talking about a little-known part of World War II. Not so much little-known because it's not worth note, but because it's weird and eclectic and involved like 30 guys to my overall understanding.
And a castle.
Yes.
Well,
castle.
it's Europe, so I mean, castles probably.
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
no,
expected.
they're lousy with the fucking things. Yeah, no, but Castle Itter. Now, we were supposed to record this like 2-3 weeks ago, and when we did that, I did like the barest bones research to understand this. So I just want to throw out what I've got nailed down here. Castle Itter was an occupied fortress held by the Nazis during World War II that was used as a prison for French political prisoners. Am I at least in the ballpark so far? I'm sure I've already said something dumb, but am I at least in the right ballpark?
You are basically correct, yes.
Okay, and now, furthermore, to my understanding, most of these French prisoners were from radically different political backgrounds, economic backgrounds, and all kind of just hated each other, and there was one tennis pro who was fucking everybody's wife and mistress, because it was France. We're not going to deny prisoners their wives and mistresses. That would be
conjugal
cruel.
visits.
Except for the wife and mistress fucking, that's right.
I could have
no
sworn there was something
visits?
about a horny tennis pro.
There is, in fact, a tennis pro, and he does some interesting stuff. Fucking other guys' wives and mistresses was not what I heard.
I could have sworn there was something about a thirsty tennis pro.
I think you're just projecting.
I might be, but I think my version might be better.
If there was, it did not come up in my research.
Now, what makes it really interesting, because there's a fair number of facilities that could fall under the description I've given thus far. That they had more prisons, and this was a pretty small place.
Yeah.
What makes it interesting is when it was finally liberated, it was by a joint U.S.-German force.
Yes.
Now,
and
this
then
is
some.
World War II, right?
Yeah, World War II.
So would this be a Nazi force?
Well, arguably yes, but no.
Okay.
This was a force made up of Americans, Germans, and then some. We'll just call it and then some. I'll get into that. Protecting these guys from SS units who had been ordered to liquidate them rather than let the Allies get their hands on them.
Okay,
Don't
I
you mean
got you.
evacuate?
Evacuate, liquidate, potato.
Yeah,
At
least
least
in
what
German.
Nazis.
So is that it? At your
I believe there's something about them attempting an escape at one point where they tried to build a glider, but that might be something else that I'm thinking of.
yeah, that might be something else.
I think the only other like real notable rock solid piece of information I have about this that like paints any sort of meaningful detail is that just before the war, the castle had been revamped to be a hotel, and the hotel had gone under. So while this was a prison, it was also like a 5-star hotel and really nice.
Yes, basically, yeah.
Yeah, so like don't think of this as like, Nazi concentration camp. It wasn't that. This is where they took the people they liked.
But yes and no. We'll get into that. All right. Like you said, this place was called Castle Itter, or Itter Castle, Schloss Itter in German.
Itter, like I-T-O-R?
I-T-T-E-R.
Itter.
Just while we're on that
It
subject,
took me like 3 Google searches to get it right, because Google had no fucking clue what I meant.
yeah, while we're on the subject, I'm going to go ahead and apologize right now. There are a lot of German and French names in here, and I guarantee I will butcher them. I will try to do my best.
Just remember, in French, the T's are silent. That's all you gotta do.
A lot of these I have heard in audiobook form, so it should help a little bit, but
Well,
we'll see.
That only assumes that reader had a fact checker there that day, and I don't.
That is
trust
true.
That shit.
Of course,
That is
Dan.
true.
I was. If you were
Yeah.
gonna say it, I was.
That is true.
Bantam Del Day Double Publishing presents.
Castle Itter. It's located. What is it? I think it is about 35 miles east of the Austrian city of Innsbruck, which is near the Austrian-German border. If you know what Austria looks like, it basically looks like a chicken leg, and this is basically kind of where the chicken leg starts to go wide, if you will, where the bulb.
It's the meat.
Yeah, where the bone hits the meat, kind of a thing. Like straight south of Bavaria. Gives you an idea where this is. The battle itself takes place on May 5th, which is 3 days before the actual end of the war, which does make this the last official battle of the war.
See, you would think just by merit of it being the last official action, it would be more talked about, just as like the closing salvo, but nothing.
Actually, we'll get into this at the end. I was surprised how much actual references to this I found in other areas of pop culture. But
Okay.
yeah,
I'm excited.
Yeah, generally considered the strangest battle of World War II, which is, I think, pretty much fits the description of it. The only time Americans and Germans fight alongside each other in the conflict, and basically what you're looking at, expanding on what you said, this was a fight of American GIs, Wehrmacht or German regular army soldiers, Austrian Resistance fighters, an SS captain, 2 former French prime ministers, 2 former French commanders-in-chief, a French tennis star, a Croatian communist, a Czech cook, and others. Because they list them all.
Others.
Wait.
The rest.
Yeah.
They weren't important enough to get star billing.
More a matter of I just didn't want to create a list
No,
that long.
This is like how at the start of the movie there's like 8 names, but then the first cred at the end is also starring after those same 8 names. They're in that longer list that no one's ever read, that Carl Urban is always on for some horrifying reason.
Going back to the castle itself, as you said, it's to the east of the larger city of Innsbruck, which would be the actual only place I'm going to talk about that really qualifies as a city. More importantly, it's about 4 miles south of the town of Wurgl.
Wargle.
Wurgl. It is
Wargle.
I
Wurgl.
love that name.
Come to Wargle Rock.
Pronounced-
Fight the Nazis back.
Yeah. Wurgl. Wurgl. That
They eat radishes because that's all that will grow in this barren, war-torn wasteland.
yeah. That will be the principal one. Other than the castle itself, that will be the principal location we talk about during this.
Idea for merch: a Come to Wargle Rock hat.
I'd buy it.
I would too.
The castle is pretty well located for a castle. It's not that big. It's only like 2 main buildings and a front and rear courtyard. But it's basically on a
Well, correct me if I'm
isolated
wrong.
little.
Like, all it takes to be a castle is just like an outer wall around the main structure, isn't it? Like, there's a lot of shit that like is defined as a castle that when you look at, it's like, That's just a building.
More of a manor house style.
Yeah.
There's a lot of castles that aren't what we think of as the European standardized
Doesn't
castle.
it just refer to like the fashion of fortifications to like get in and out? Like, isn't that
It's
really
a classification of fortification. It's a type of fortification.
It also depends on what language you're talking about. Cause
there are castles
the
in other
French
countries.
word of Castile, while it technically means castle, is also used to describe any large town.
Yeah. You also have Chinese
like
castles,
that.
Japanese
Wasn't it
castles.
also used to describe fortresses?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's-
depending on the language and where
The
around
exa-
in
the
Europe,
exact
it can
de-
look very
The
different.
exact definition of that term is well beyond the scope of the discussion we're having. That could be an entire episode in and of itself, the history of castles. It's not actually a bad idea.
I love that you're telling the stoner this is well beyond the scope of our discussion.
Our discussions have no
I'm hoping
scope.
that you know that
We are scopeless.
knowing what I know about you, that me saying it will indicate that it's a serious enough thing that we should in fact move on before we get down too big of a rabbit hole.
Macroscopic focus. That's all I'm saying, man. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, 13 pages of notes. Let's move this along.
For kids.
We are definitely not for children.
Oh God,
No,
no.
but we need a shirt that says that.
Yeah. All right. Like I said, it's basically on a hill next to a kind of a ravine on three sides with a bridge going across, just outside the small town of Itter. There's a map there for you if you want to take a look at that. I don't know if you want to hold that up to the camera.
I don't know how much that's gonna fucking help.
Well,
I don't know how well that's going to show
You know-
up.
Well, I
you
would
know
imagine
what
you
would
have to
be
actually
a
walk
thou-
up
you know
to
what would
the
be a
camera
thousand
in
times
order to-
smarter?
Yeah.
Using like the YouTube embedded tools to use some Google food to just put up a Google image search of the area. I'm just saying
True.
that would make more sense. You know, something like over here.
yeah. For lack of a better for any sort of visual image, it's basically a kind of a triangle or a wedge, a narrow wedge.
Yeah, large
Type
square
shape.
building with it looks like a triangular courtyard out front.
Yeah, you got the walls, two big main buildings, walls going all the way around, and a large courtyards in the front and the back.
Without having topography, I'm having to assume this is like in the hills, just based on the way they built it. Like, that's,
Oh yeah,
that's kinda
mountainous area.
narrow.
This is in a region known as the Tyrol.
Yeah, they
It's
built
basically in
they
the
built
Alps.
this on
Okay.
an incline. They flattened a
Yeah.
space and then made it.
I put the little hashes there to kind of indicate the edges of the actual hill, and then there's a
yeah,
bridge going off the.
that makes sense. That's
Okay.
yeah, no, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fairly deep
reasonably
ravine.
well defensive.
Yeah, fairly deep ravine. You can actually run down into and up the thing here. At least on this side. This side's much sharper, and there will in fact actually be combat happens in that area during the actual battle. Anyways, the fortification or a fortification at that location dates back to about the 9th century, the 800s.
Nice.
So it's been a thing for a while. It's had numerous different owners over the centuries. Again,
Most
along,
castles
I
do.
find most old things do. Usually,
Yeah.
somebody eventually dies.
a couple of ones of note are in the late 1500s. It was used as a base for witch hunting.
Yep, that does not
Yeah.
surprise me.
In 1805, Napoleon officially took
Napoleon!
ownership of it. I don't know if he ever actually
which one?
lived there.
Which one?
The first one.
Okay.
And then in 1884, it came under the possession of Sophie Mentor, who is apparently a famous.
Mentor, why does that name ring a bell?
She's a famous pianist and composer.
That would be
Yep.
why.
Yeah. Also, while she owned the castle in 1892, Tchaikovsky actually visited and wrote one of his pieces there. I could not figure out the
I'm
name
gonna
of
have
the
to
piece.
find that out.
Yeah, no, I'm really.
But-
I'm a
super
big
curious
fan of
now.
Tchaikovsky.
Oh no, same here.
Yeah, all I could find out was it was something based off of Hungarian gypsy melodies, whatever it was.
Okay, I think I
That
know the one
doesn't
you're talking
super
about,
narrow it
but
down.
yeah, Tchaikovsky has a couple that are like
Well,
that.
he did
Yeah.
a bunch of cultural
Yeah.
pieces, so that's one of those things of like, okay, is this part of a larger piece or is this something focused? Like, that's the real question.
Either way, very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. there were other famous musicians who at the time who stayed there as well. More importantly, then in 1902, it was not 1902. In 1925, it came into the possession of Franz Gruner, who fixed it up. It had actually been operating, as you said before, as a hotel for a while. They had tried to use it as a hotel multiple times over the years, and sometimes it was successful, sometimes it wasn't.
Well, to my
It would fall into disrepair a
To
lot.
my understanding, it's kind of in bumfuck nowhere. It's in pretty bumfuck nowhere, but it's bumfuck nowhere.
Yeah, I mean it's designed as a retreat for wealthy, really wealthy individuals. At one point, the thing got so degraded that the people in the neighboring towns just started picking parts off of it to use for building materials.
That
At
is
one
actually
point-
really common for
Yeah.
old structures like that. They'll just start taking apart the wall to build their houses.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, you guys realize that
Good
Detroit
brick
is
is
home
good
to more
brick.
architectural ruins than any other modern city on Earth, and
Yeah.
there are still people that make their living by illegally raiding copper out of the fucking
Yep.
things.
Yeah. No. There's also people who I've seen at least one guy who makes a living by illegally sneaking into the abandoned buildings and shit and like photographing them like you would like ancient ruins.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a genuine interest in preserving them, especially because a
Yeah.
lot of these places were built and the original blueprints are gone. So to try and say what was here and what it did is getting kind of hard.
Yeah. All right.
You know what they say? 100 years is a long time in America.
Yeah. Then the war comes along, and in 1940 the building is leased by the German government, which at least at first they actually properly lease it. They do in fact pay the guy. They don't just take it right
actually
outright.
had the deeds
Now-
legally.
Yeah.
Now, did they do it in Deutschmarks or France
Well,
is also on a mark? Fuck.
Francs.
Oh,
France.
Franks, yeah.
Well, this is in Austria, which by this point in time was annexed into the Reich. So, Deutschmarks.
Probably tax waivers. Let's be honest.
Anyways,
I just have
they
a
don't.
hard time seeing the Nazis signing many checks. I just have a hard time seeing it.
And if it was the Nazis, it was probably bars of gold. Nazis got a thing for gold.
Largely because they stole it from Jewish people's fillings.
Yeah. Anyways, they don't use it for like the first 2 years. They just kind of have it. In 1942, it becomes the headquarters of the German Alliance for Combating the Dangers of Tobacco.
Okay,
Because-
I'm actually not super shocked by this. One of the things that gets buried when people talk about the war because Nazis, evil,
Yeah.
awful. Their scientists prove a link between tobacco and cancer in the fucking 30s, and then it took our scientific establishment another 30 years to agree with that data.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I like the Nazis. I'm saying broken clocks are right twice a day. That was one of them.
Yeah, in particular, this was one of Hitler's bigger pet peeves. He really wasn't did not like smoking.
He didn't like
This was his
anything fun,
personal-
to be clear. He was a vegetarian and a
Vegetarian?
teetotaler. He
Yeah.
did nothing fun.
Yeah. He left that shit to his lieutenants, who did it in excess. But yeah, they used it to. They actually distribute a lot of like pamphlets and propaganda out of there.
You want to
that.
talk German drug use? Sorry, but I was coughing there. But this is relevant. One of the big reasons that the Russian offensive was such a massive goddamn shit show was that they kept shipping amphetamines to the tank battalions to just keep them running
Yeah,
for like 20
I've
hour
heard that.
shifts and shit.
Yeah.
So like he just had a bunch of coked out guys being like, "Schnell, schnell!"
Oh yeah, the Nazis' use of cocaine and other amphetamines
Yeah,
are
no, like they
prolific.
Like, they had desk generals and shit being like, no, wait, and sending the word to wait, and just a bunch of coke fiend tankers just like, 9!
Yeah. Well, they do this. They use this for the anti-tobacco stuff for about a year, until in 1943 it's finally outright seized by the SS on orders of Himmler.
So this realistically wasn't a prison all that long.
Literally the next half of my sentence. And it's used specifically to be used for VIPs, but it is run as part of the Dachau concentration camp system.
Really?
Yes, it is part of a concentration camp. It's a cushy part of a concentration camp, but it is run as a part of a
Alan,
concentration
I want
camp.
you to say that sentence for me one more time, just for the novelness of the history of that. I
You
want
mean
that preserved.
The phrase "a cushy part of a concentration
Yeah,
camp"?
yeah. I just want
Yeah.
us to all mull
Yeah.
that over for a minute. Okay, you're going to hell.
Cognitive
but continue.
dissonance.
Okay. Noted. All right.
You're the one who said it.
Well. All right.
Look at the bright side. We finally got you for something.
See, you know, I'm just going to take a moment to point out, people have different types of stress reaction. Some people laugh at inappropriate things, and that's okay.
True. And I will say, on the lighter end of this, because it's part of the concentration camp system, they used concentration camp prisoners for a lot of stuff, and that probably ended up saving a lot of those people's lives by the fact that they worked at this castle.
That is a good silver lining.
Very
If you managed to get sent here, at least you probably weren't going to end up dead in a ditch or a gas chamber.
It's like one of those things. If you were good at math or like you were a beyond competent typist, the Nazis were still going to use you because they had shortages on their white collar end.
Actually, thank you for that
Their
segue.
personnel.
They specifically took a lot of skilled individuals out of Dachau and Flossenburg as well.
I mean, like all of this is still
to
bad,
help build
but
and
this is at least better than it was sounding. Like this is still fucking awful. I don't want to send mixed signals.
And remember, if this battle hadn't gone the way it had, they all probably would have ended up dead anyways.
Oh,
but
I'm not trying to wait. Just like bit weird.
Yeah.
So far, just a bit odd.
Well,
that is
what
the
you've
description
said
of this
about
whole
this
thing.
entire thing is it's a bit
My
odd.
question is,
Yeah.
where does the thirsty tennis pro fit into this?
We'll get there.
Doesn't.
No, but one of these individuals who gets brought in from the concentration camps is a skilled electrician named Zvonimir Kukovic.
Where the fuck is? Let me see this.
Zvonimir Kukovic?
Kukovic. That's the important name. Most of the names I have are
Kukovic. Yeah, I
Kukovic.
think that's what it is.
A lot of these names I only have last names for. Again, apologize, but that's just what I was able to get or remember at least. lot of hard to pronounce names. He actually gets left behind. Most of the other prisoners get sent off. I don't know if they go back to the camp or if they get sent to other work, but he gets left behind because the electrical work isn't done yet.
Depending on the time period, there were some that just ended up getting cut loose just through sheer bureaucratic incompetence in the final days.
Yeah.
Some people just went missing on spreadsheets and they went to the wind.
Yeah. This is still in 43, so
Okay.
middle of the war.
Not yet.
Yeah,
Yet. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out.
And this is where I mentioned the Croatian communist. He was a member of the.
This
This is
tell me
that
about
guy.
my comrade.
He was a member of a Croatian communist resistance group in Yugoslavia. Got captured, and then sent to Dachau, and then he got roped into this. And like I said, he gets left behind, and he will end up playing a major role in this whole thing. The command they use it is part of the concentration camp system, so they end up using guards from the who are part of the regular concentration camp guard rotation. Importantly, they give command of this place to SS Captain Sebastian Wimmer. Wimmer. Wimmer.
Wimmer.
Yeah.
Sebastian Wimmer.
Now, this guy is the poster child for what you would, like, you look up stereotypical evil Nazi
SS.
fuck.
Well,
This
with
is
a
the guy
name
you
like
look at.
Wimmer.
Yeah, this is the guy you find in there.
He was a traditionalist Nazi.
This is the kind of guy who's in it for the brutality, not the ideology.
Gotcha.
Even before the war, when he was a police.
I just love killing.
I know
What
that.
can I
I
tell ya?
just suddenly realized how relevant this is.
Is he the Krombopulous Michael of Germany? Women, kids, I don't care. I just love killing.
He didn't have nearly as happy a disposition.
How
But-
do you know?
You were about to
He
say...
may have killed them with kindness.
You were about to say
He
something
may have
about.
called his pistol kindness.
I was gonna say, and I just
You've interrupted me twice now.
yeah.
What else is new?
For the record, it's
Fair.
we're about 20 minutes in. We haven't got to the part where I was planning on being 5 minutes in. So
14
More
pages,
big
Alan.
news.
13.
What did I tell you?
13. Only 13.
What did I tell you?
Anyways, yeah, this guy was a bad apple. Before the war, he was a police sergeant and already had a reputation for brutality.
Oh, you don't fucking say.
Yes. We're not going to touch that because that would take it.
I believe I just did. Moving on.
Yeah,
Do I
moving
need
on.
to get my 10-foot pole?
No, I just ran up with my bare hands.
He
Let me just smear some of the blood on you, too.
Yeah, but he joined the SS in 1935. Had a reputation for being nearly as brutal with his own men as he was with the people he was in charge of.
You know, I find that's a strangely common thread throughout history from anyone who attains a high rank in any organization. It seems like for lack of a better analogy, cruelty is the cream which rises to the top in a militant organization.
At least with him, it was a matter of he liked being cruel to people, and he didn't care who it was. So in the absence of people to lord over, he had his men there. So that's who he took out his desire for sadism out on.
Oh yeah, no. I've heard stories from as recently as the Iraq War. I've heard shit out of Vietnam. This isn't an uncommon thread in history. Is all I'm getting at.
No. He during the beginning of the war, he served in several behind-the-lines units in the Sudetenland in Poland, doing the sorts of things that you would imagine go along with that sort of thing.
Right.
To the point where stuff he did was so brutal, the regular army officers, like the generals and shit, actually complained to Himmler about the guy.
Oh, nice. This man goes too far.
It is impressive when Nazis are like, this guy's a little uptight.
Yeah, at which point Himmler just ignored them. Of
right,
course.
Himmler.
Because Himmler.
Himmler was probably like, no, this is exactly what you all should be doing.
Yeah, and in 1942, he was placed in charge of the day-to-day operations of the Majdanek death camp. So, yeah.
I feel like that name should be way more familiar to
Majdanek?
me.
You're not familiar with Majdanek?
Not terribly.
Oh.
The name's ringing a bell, but I'm not tying it to like any names, a date, nothing.
It's up there with, Treblinka, Auschwitz.
Okay.
Yeah. It's one of the less commonly thrown out names
That's
in general history,
Auschwitz is
but
the
it's
one
up there.
everybody hears
Yeah,
about.
I
Majdanek is
I
right
can't
up
name
there.
them all off
Yeah.
the top of my head, which okay, I may be a bad person for that, but
Yeah. I think it actually started out
there were shitty prisons that weren't part of death camps too.
I might be
Like,
wrong on this, but I think it was actually one of the later ones to be converted to a death camp. I think it started out as just a regular concentration camp, and they fairly late in the war they started using it as a extermination camp. I could be wrong on that, but I think I've heard that.
Yeah, in a
Anyways, it's the kind of guy we're dealing with. This guy's already destined for a war crimes tribunal before he's even set foot in this castle.
Yeah, no, he's the guy who grabs 102 people, gives them 102 shovels, tells them to dig a hole, shoots 100 of them, and then makes the last two pick up the shovels.
Yeah.
And then shoots the last two. Yeah.
No, someone has to carry the shovels back.
Yeah. And then in April of 1943, he is appointed commander of Castle Itter. And he basically, this is a case of he takes it out mostly on his own guys because he's under strict orders that the VIPs he's in charge of are important enough they need to be left alone. He can't abuse these guys. They're important. He will get in trouble if he does. So
I almost feel like
woe
this was
on his men.
I feel like this was a punishment detail for him almost. Like, we're going to give you these guys, but you can't do shit to them. That almost feels a little personal given what you've already said.
I did see some people questioning why he got this job, given that. Some people, the one thing I saw was maybe just because he saw it as a step closer to like working at Dachau proper or something. Also, just because if they knew, they might have needed somebody at the event of, if the war was lost, that somebody would need to liquidate the guys would need to eliminate them, and they wanted to make sure they had somebody who wasn't going to have any qualms about
Because
that.
there's a shortage of those dudes.
But, anyways, so
He was a good pick for someone who would be willing and able to carry out the liquidation.
yeah, basically, the actual work they do on the castle is pretty much mostly just sprucing it up and putting in some extra like bars on some windows and shit.
Probably
I mean,
adding some swastikas.
Yeah, it's a castle. It's
No,
already pretty
hanging
well.
banners.
Yeah,
They carry those. They carried those things everywhere with them.
yeah. I mean, because it's a castle. It's already kind of designed. It's a pretty sturdy place to
Yeah.
with heavy gates and shit like that.
Fortification.
Yeah. The prisoners start arriving shortly thereafter and will continue to arrive sporadically until about a month before the battle happens. In order, the more prominent ones, these weren't the only ones. There were a couple others of the prominent ones. Well, before we get to the prominent ones, there were what they called number prisoners, a number of women who were brought in to work as like housekeeping staff. They were called number prisoners because of the numbers on their arms, the tattoos.
Right.
Yeah, everyone sucked at nicknames in the 40s. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
It's internationally true. No one had a good nickname between the years of 1921 and 1967. This is a fact.
All right. The VIPs were Edward Dallier, Daladier. I know that. I'm probably butchering it a little, but I know it's not
you're
pronounced.
very close.
Okay. Dallier. He was the former French prime minister. He's prime minister when the World War II started. He was also prime minister when the Munich Agreement was signed. Although, unlike Chamberlain, he didn't actually believe Hitler was going to honor it. He just saw it as a stopgap measure.
So I'm going to interrupt you because I think this is going to be hilarious. When you said you were going to have to cut down your notes, and the way you were going to do it was by highlighting what was important and leaving off what wasn't. I look at your notes.
The entire thing is highlighted.
The entire thing is highlighted except for two parts, but one of them is a standalone bullet point, and you're just leaving it out. So I'm bringing it. You just didn't feel like mentioning they were a socialist?
It was more a matter of, for the guys who were politicians, I felt it wasn't necessary to describe which political faction they were part of. From all but one of them, but that's a unique case.
That so doesn't take away from the humor of what I just
said.
I
know. It's funny. It is funny.
I think I just gave
when
us
you
a
look
teaser,
at it that way.
but
It is funny. But, yeah. He resigns in March 1940. He is one of a number of officials who flee to Casablanca in North Africa. He wanted to keep up the fight.
He heard there was this bar there.
Eventually, after the Vichy government forms and France surrenders, he comes back in August of that year and is told he's going to be put on trial by the Vichy government as a scapegoat. Quite amusingly, he, along with a couple other of these guys, get put on this trial. The Nazis bring the trial to an end prematurely because they were doing so good of a job defending themselves. Because they were all lawyers. They were embarrassing them, so they just stopped the trial.
That sounds like a Nazi thing to do.
All right, no more defending yourself. You're guilty because I said so. Now take them out back and kill them.
Look, we said we would give you rights. We didn't think any of you would use them. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. And interesting for him, he had actually stayed at Castle Itter in 1932 when it was being run as a hotel. So not his first trip. The next one is Maurice Gamelan. He was the commander of the French army at the war start. He was removed in command in May 1940 because, well, they were losing. And was eventually arrested in September of 1940 by the Germans. He was also put on trial with Dallier, but obviously that didn't go through. Another one is Leon, and I cannot pronounce this for the life of me.
Let me see.
Jouhaux.
Let me see it.
Jonah, maybe? A weird French Jonah?
Jean, I can pronounce.
Jahu. I know the X is silent.
French nonsense.
Jahou or Jahu, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me say it. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of these. We're just going to have to deal with it.
I usually pick out pronunciations for most of the Europeans, but that one is a bit stumping.
We'll just call him Leon. Leon. He was the Secretary General of the CTG Trade Union, which once the Germans took over, started operating its own resistance movement. He originally was supposed to get out in November of 41. The British came up with a plan to get him out through Portugal, but he was betrayed by somebody in his group to the Vichy government and was arrested right before he got on the plane. Next one is Paul Renault. He was the French Prime Minister after Dallier resigned. The last thing he did was in June 15, part of the June 15 cabinet meeting, that when they voted to surrender, and then immediately resigned.
Yeah, he's a stereotype.
Yeah, and then was picked up and arrested by the Germans on September 6th. Getting to the tennis player. I don't know how thirsty he was, but the tennis player.
Man lost in the desert.
Jean Barotra was a very well-known French tennis player. He was importantly part of a far-right veterans group and a political party that would be led by a man named Delaroque, who was another prisoner we'll get to.
That name is stupid levels familiar.
Yeah.
There have been a number of Delaroques throughout history as
French,
well. Yeah. It's a fairly common name.
Well, yeah.
Well, so's Renault.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost the Smith of French names.
Yeah.
The Kim of Korean.
He actually fights in combat. He was a reserve officer briefly, and then after the war, agrees to serve in the Vichy government as the minister. Was it Minister for Sport? I think something like that. And in that job, though, he agrees to work for the new government because it's the government, and he likes Pétain. He is an individual, but right from the get-go, he did not cooperate with what the Germans were telling him to do, pretty much at all.
Well, on principle, I don't feel you should ever cooperate with Germans.
Yeah. Until eventually comes to an end, his job comes to an end when he refuses to ban undesirables from the French sporting organizations. At that point, the Germans make the Vichy government fire him.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah. He eventually gets arrested by the Gestapo attempting to flee to Free France later on. Interesting enough, when he gets there, he immediately starts planning to escape. He will eventually make...
Well, I think a lot of people had escape on their minds when the Gestapo got them.
Yeah. Well,
correct me if I'm wrong, but if you woke up in a prisoner of war camp, don't you think you'd be looking at a spoon?
True.
Like, how long would it take to tunnel?
But most of these guys, though, they weren't in a regular prison. They were prisoner of war camp. They were in a schwanky what was essentially a schwanky hotel, and being decently treated. This dude, right off the bat, just straight up starts looking for ways out. He attempts 3 different times to escape. He actually gets out of the castle and gets a fair amount of distance away each time, and they have to go running him down.
That's actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, and they bring him back.
He almost escaped from the
does not
Gestapo.
get punished any of those times because of who he is.
Running back and forth on that court, he had to be fairly athletic. He gave him a good run.
Yeah, I believe, and he does do that while he's there. He maintains like a physical fitness regimen, constantly trying.
You don't got
yeah.
anything else to do when you're locked in a room all day.
True. Oh well, they did.
That's why so many
actually they did.
work out in
they were
prison
probably
and
just
stuff.
locked on the property.
Yeah.
They probably had free reign.
All right.
Most of the
At least limited
most
amounts.
of the swankier prisons during the World Wars for like officers and shit, like it was more like a resort where it's like, no, you just don't get to leave, asshole. What newspaper do you want? No, you can't leave.
Right.
All right. The next one is Augusta Bookland, and I that one I only have phonetic pronunciation for. I don't have an actual spelling. He was the guy I couldn't pronounce earlier is what do we call him? Leon's mistress.
Leon Kennedy.
Yeah, he was Leon's mistress. She was a
She
active
was
in the
blown tennis player. Thirsty.
You really want there to be some
I
goings
seem to
on
recall
here.
this somewhere in my research.
there is enough going on here without the sexual scandal.
You also remember a giant kite.
Excuse
so, you know.
me. A common reaction to life-threatening circumstances is to do something life-affirming, and there is nothing more life-affirming than ball-slapping, sticky, wet sex. There is nothing more life-affirming than that.
Well,
Well,
this
there's
is all-
cocaine, but
Fuck.
Anyways,
this is Nazis.
Fuck.
all right.
Forgot about cocaine.
She was actually herself involved in the resistance activities, although they never pegged her for that.
Oh, she got pegged all right.
See, that wasn't funny until you got mad. Now it's just gold.
She the interesting thing with her is she never gets caught or whatever, but when her lover gets moved to a concentration camp, which I didn't actually get it marked down on here, but a lot of these individuals actually spent time in several of them spent time in actual concentration camps before they
got here.
When they got here. In his case, he did. He actually went to the city of Vichy in France, went to the officials there, and asked to be incarcerated with him. She actually had to sign a document that said she
kinda
was
sweet.
forfeiting her right to freedom or
Isn't that
whatever to be
stupid?
concentrated. Yeah.
I mean, I can see the romanticism in that, but God, that's stupid. Handing yourself
Yeah.
over to the
Nazis.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. That's love, baby.
Yeah, no, like I can see the romantic end of that.
That must
Yeah.
have been some good dick.
And you thought she was fucking the tennis star.
I'm sure she was. She's French, Alan. Just because she's faithful doesn't mean she doesn't wander.
Okay, moving on. Maxime Vegan.
No. That means she always comes home. I mean, it's not like they're allowed to kiss her on the mouth.
Maxime Vegan, the guy who was also commander-in-chief of the German army for the latter half of the war. He serves as Minister of Defense in the Vichy regime for a while until, for similar reasons to the tennis star, doesn't want to cooperating a whole lot. So the Germans make him resign, and he becomes commander of the French forces in Africa until November of 1941, when he is removed from command. And then in 1942, he is arrested and detained by the Germans. Then Michel, I think that's how you say Michael in German, Michel.
Yes.
Michel Clemenceau, who was arrested more for who he was rather than what he did. He was the son of Georges Clemenceau. Anyways,
Sorry.
the important name here is Clemenceau.
Yes.
He was the son of Georges Clemenceau, who was prime minister at the end of World War I of France.
Okay.
Very, very, very well-known individual. He himself fought in the actual battle in the war as a major in the army. Although he's actually, by this point in time, he's actually fairly old. He's like at least in like his 50s, I think. He got the commission, I think, because of his name. And then he's arrested in 1943 for vocally speaking out against the Vichy regime. probably the most interesting guy on this list, to a degree, except for maybe the tennis star, Francois Delaroque. Delaroque is interesting because in 1931 he became
Did
leader.
we already talked about a Delroque?
I mentioned him when I was talking about the tennis star.
Okay, gotcha.
He was the tennis star was part of this guy's political movement.
Gotcha.
1931, he became leader of the French fascist movement. This guy was a French fascist.
Proof that Nazis play nice with no one.
Though he, again, very anti-German, very nationalistic fascist. He opposed the war. He opposed the armistice. He worked briefly for the Vichy government. But while he was doing that, was actually formed a resistance group of his own known as the Klan Network.
Oh God.
Yeah.
This was.
Oh God.
Oh.
No.
With a C. This one's spelled with a C.
I don't care.
Still a poor choice of name.
Well,
The only clan I support is the Clan MacLeod.
anyways, they did.
There can be only one.
Yeah, they gathered and passed intel to the British. Eventually, he got arrested in March of '43. Then we have Marie Gamelan and her husband, I believe it was Alfred Callot. They got arrested because, although she was actually involved with the French resistance, she actually got detained because she was Charles de Gaulle's sister. Of all the people who were detained...
That feels like crazy level sexist. It's like, sir, she's conspiring against us. Oh, that's adorable. Also, she's related to this guy who fucked us up. You destroy her!
Just like with Clemenceau, I mean, the whole point of holding these guys was to use as potential hostages to, ransom back. So that's why they picked up famous people,
Yeah, force a settlement.
Yeah, we have this famous person's, sister, so give us a whole bunch of POWs or shit like that. Of all the ones who actually spent time in actual concentration camps, most of the others, because of their higher status, they weren't, it was still a concentration camp. They were not in great conditions, but they were still better than the average prisoner. These two actually got stuck in the gen pop of a concentration camp for a while. I believe her husband ultimately dies later in life due to complications to
time spent there.
Yeah, the time spent there.
Arguably, most Holocaust survivors died due to complications
Yeah.
and that shit.
They were picked up again in '43. I believe they were the last ones to actually arrive at the castle. They got there about a month before the events of the actual battle and such. And as you mentioned before, they basically do self-segregate themselves when they get there because you do have
they don't
groups,
like one another. They're all radically different people.
because you've basically got
different series of beliefs, different nationalities.
Basically broke down into three groups. I guess you guys the guys who still
the Socias
and the Goths.
The
And then there's the band kids that are all in the corner over there with the Frenchie.
That's four groups. What are you doing, man? You're fucking this
basically
up.
you had the guys who just flat out opposed Vichy or were otherwise mistreated by Vichy right from the beginning. They would have seen themselves as the true patriots,
Right.
Which would have been Renaud, Clemenceau, and Gamelan. Then you had Wigan, Barotra, and Delaroque, who were looked on upon because they would work for Vichy, or otherwise sympathized with it. And then the others, who were basically kind of a neutral bloc, who just didn't want anything to do with either of the others.
From outside of that particular political problem.
Yeah, or had just other independent reasons for, like Deladier, just really, really did not like Paul Renaud. The two of them spent most of their free time at the castle writing their memoirs that would basically criticize the other guy, writing the memoirs that would knock down their political opponent, who they were sharing a prison with. So, these guys did not like each other. The actual treatment they got there, as we said, it was basically a hotel. It was a hotel they couldn't leave. Comfortable rooms. They got the same quality food as the guards did, which admittedly got worse as the war went on because the guard,
Right.
Yeah.
But
Eventually,
decent food.
Everything got worse
there's
for them
nothing
as the
for
war
it.
went
Generally
on.
decent
Yeah.
food. Occasionally they got more fancy stuff. They each got a liter of red wine and a liter of white wine every week
That's not
per
bad.
person.
Fucking Europe.
Yeah. They had a large library with about 300 books in it. So they, a nice library. So they did have stuff
had
to read.
ways to pass the time. You said that they were writing memoirs, which means they were being given ink and paper. And
The women prisoners, obviously for the VIP ones, not the help, obviously, were actually allowed under guard to take trips down to the town to see a hairdresser.
I'm
So,
kind of surprised they didn't bring the hairdresser in.
but yeah, so that's
Surprised they didn't just arrest a hairdresser.
Exactly.
among,
Right?
yeah,
Like-
among, and then
Exactly.
there were other
And they
things.
couldn't find a hairdresser among Gen Pop.
The
This
person
is
in
a
the town
hole
had
in,
the
this is
equipment,
a
I guess.
hole
I
in
don't
this
know.
story. This doesn't track.
Anyways, yeah, but anyway, so that's kind of the setup of what we've got going there, right? This group of French VIPs kind of living fairly decently, just under guard.
I forgot this was still the setup.
Super shitty
Yeah.
German guy
Oh, yeah,
as the warden.
We're about 45 minutes in. I should
We
have been
still
about
haven't
20.
had
about
a
10
shot
minutes in.
fired
Alan,
yet.
whose fault is that?
Yours.
You and
Oh,
you.
no.
Mostly you.
No. I've been being quiet for most of the last bit of this, and
For the last bit, it's the part at the
Alan,
front that you were
Alan.
talking over.
Alan.
I should have gotten through that in
Alan.
like 3 minutes. You made it like 20.
Alan, you could not get through all that you had highlighted in 3 minutes.
Yes, I could have.
And little conversations like this just drag things out.
Further
even
drag it
further.
on. All right. Anyways,
Pick a side, damn it.
all right. Now we're getting to the actual
I'm gonna be
event
Poland over
itself.
here.
Then you're about to
Oh
be
wait,
crushed.
no,
Yeah, wrong. Bad
Wrong.
analogy.
wrong analogy.
Anyways,
You want to be Poland, that's fine. You're picking a side.
all right. Anyways, we start off basically at the end of April, and this whole area, the Tyrol region, is basically got the Allies coming in from every direction. You got the Russians coming in from the east, U.S. forces coming in from the south and from the north and the west. The
They're
closest,
just kind of surrounded on most
yeah,
sides.
the closest Allied units at this point are only about 15 miles away.
Well, you also have to think about how late into the war this is.
Right.
Yeah, this is
Well, this was when it was mostly cleanup. Well, or no, you said this was right after the agreement. This was the last official battle of the war.
this is 3 days before the actual surrender.
Okay.
By the time this
Okay.
is happening, Hitler's already dead. This basically happens in between the time span between when Hitler kills himself in Berlin and when the German army
War
surrenders.
is still declared at this point.
Yeah.
in
Okay.
time.
There were, yeah.
Things are going badly for the Germans, but they haven't surrendered yet.
Yeah. So you've basically got
Yeah,
at least.
this is the reason why Return of the Jedi doesn't make sense.
Okay. You basically got like multiple U.S. and Russian armies converging in on this area. On the German side, there's about 3,000 mixed regular army SS units. The Allies at this point are concerned that these SS guys are going to like build like Viet Cong style tunnels in the Alps and dig in and hide. They had an intel
How were
saying
they
that.
worried about Vietnam-style tunnels in the 40s?
I'm using an anachronistic analogy, so sue me.
Fine, I will. I'll see you in court.
Anyways,
Gentlemen,
yeah. I mean, it turns out they're wrong. The intel is wrong. The SS don't have any plans like this. They're just trying to.
Well, of course, the Viet Cong hadn't done it yet. They had no one to copy yet.
Or would the Viet Cong have copied them? Anyways, also in this area, you also have the
He's
Austrian.
just trying to appropriate warfare for white people.
You also have Austrian Resistance units, only about 20, 30 guys, under a guy named Alois Meyer. The Austrian Resistance had actually been a thing for pretty much since the Anschluss. They didn't do much given the fact they were in what became Germany proper, and the Allies didn't really A, have a way to get to them, or B, kind of see them as,
So they existed, but without any sort of support. So
not till very late in the
they
war
didn't
did they
really
start
do
getting
much.
actual, mostly it was a lot of, and when they did do stuff, it was intel gathering.
meeting in secret rooms to talk about how bad things were,
Getting
and
getting
wishing they
intel.
could do something about it.
Because they are, in fact, part of Germany at that point.
Right.
Getting intel and trying to get it to the Allies as best as they can. Although by this point, they've got weapons and stuff now. And mostly they're trying to... You get the situation where a lot of the locals and some of the regular German army guys are basically trying to protect, not just like these VIPs, but the locals from the SS. Because at this point, the SS are trying to hunt down anybody who's a deserter,
Right.
anybody who looks like they're going to surrender. You know, a lot of these towns, people start putting up white flags
Doing
and that.
SS things.
That would get you killed if the
Yeah.
SS saw you doing it.
Yeah.
All right, and amongst these groups, we have Major Sepp Gangl, Gangl, Gangl,
Gangle.
Gangl.
Gangl.
Gangle, Gangle, something like that.
Gangle.
He's a
Opum Gangle style.
a German artillery officer who was part of the local units there, who basically by this point realizes the writing's on the wall and sees no reason for anybody to die at this point. I believe he was actually Austrian. I think he might have been Austrian born. So he also sympathized. He and some of the men under his command who were sympathetic managed to get in touch with the Austrian Resistance and kind of promised to help them out, give them weapons and resources. Eventually, he takes over like actual active command of their armed guys, armed fighter guys. So he's kind of playing that dual role.
Double agent.
Yeah. And as the war's going on and it looks like they're gonna, everybody's gonna lose, Wimmer, the guy who's in command of the thing, starts to become mentally unstable. Not the least of which because his brother dies, and when he goes to,
From what you said about his abuse and cruelty, he was probably a little unstable to begin with.
yeah,
This just
Also-
made it worse.
yeah. I like this. He goes to collect his brother's body in like the town morgue or whatever, and as he's walking up to the morgue, it gets blown up by a bomb. So the dude like not only is he just find out his brother's dead and has to collect the
But
body,
now there's no corpse.
now there's no body,
It's
and he
blown
just
up in front of him.
and he almost got killed, and almost died in a
I would
bombing.
be more pissed off that I had to go into town for an errand that ended up being a waste of time. I would be so much more pissed off about that. Just, oh, great, a party, because I'm not dealing with this shit all day already.
Yeah. Also at the same time, a lot of SS guys and their families start passing through here, kind of on their way out of Germany, trying to get
so
the hell out of
there's
here.
a larger number of SSs than normal.
Yeah, they're using it as a way station to kind of get the hell out of Dodge.
So would that be the triple S?
With an apostrophe.
SS's.
The SS apostrophe SS apostrophe SSS.
I mean,
Something-
we could go.
Something belongs to the SS. The SS's.
We could go with the Latin plural of SSI.
This is the most useful time we've ever had while recording this exact moment. Everything before this has been garbage and meaningless. This is what people need to hear.
All right. Importantly, on April 30th, Lieutenant Colonel Wilhelm Weiter, who is the commander
Of course, there's a Wilhelm.
There's always a Wilhelm.
It's a
We've
story
been over
involving
this.
Germans. There's a Wilhelm. Where's Frederick?
Back in Germany somewhere.
Yeah. This guy is the commander of Dachau, the Dachau concentration camp proper.
Okay.
Oh, he's probably a bad man. I regret.
Very bad
making
man,
fun of
yes.
him now.
He arrives along with a number of his subordinates and their families, and they kind of linger here. While here, he starts bragging about how he ordered the execution of 2,000 prisoners back at Dachau before he left. Bragging to his
That's
other
a brag.
guards and shit. That he liquidated his prisoners before he abandoned the camp. The French prisoners hear this, and this starts to get them worried that this
They're
is
gonna be liquidated?
They're next.
Yeah. That'd be a logical fear to have.
Yeah. And then on May 2nd, he shoots himself.
That's great.
Yeah.
He wanted to be
Following
like his
in
hero.
Hitler's boots.
He wanted to be like his hero.
All right. Then on what is it? On May 3rd, realizing that the Americans are getting nearby, the prisoners decide to send Kukovic, the Croatian guy, out to try and reach the Americans and let them know that they're there and that they're in danger. He manages to get away.
They sent the communists to contact the Americans. Did they think this through?
I would imagine that didn't play into it at the time. I mean, but
I mean, at the time, the communists were fighting the Nazis the same as the rest of us.
yeah.
And top military brass was like, we're gonna have to deal with these Russian guys.
Yeah, but at the same time, the
These
propaganda.
Nazi guys.
Well, at the same time, the propaganda was talking about Uncle Joe, and talking him up as a just another progressive leader. He's just another progressive. He's a social democrat, nothing more. Because that was convenient at the time because they were our allies.
Yep.
But
there will be so much grain.
anyways, he manages
So
to get
much
out.
grain, we won't let anyone use it.
Yeah,
We want to see big pile. We'll be cool.
Yeah, he manages to get out of the castle on the pretense of doing electrical work at like a farmhouse that Wimmer had set up that he was going to retreat to with his family. He rides a bike over to the city of Innsbruck.
He rides a bike because it's Europe and they're not all fat.
True. Also, he was a
There's
prisoner.
a lot of really cool stuff in Europe that happens on bicycles.
Yeah, none of us want to know about your browser history. None of us.
As he makes it to Innsbruck and is able to get in touch with the Austrian Resistance. Or rather, actually, no, not the Austrian Resistance. He manages to meet up with the American units, but they tell him that they can't leave the town until the following morning. They're still securing the area, so he's going to end up having to spend the night. On May 4th, Wimmer, reading the writing on the wall, asked the prisoner to sign a document that says he treated them all fairly.
Because that's going to hold up.
You will
Yeah.
sign?
Which I think they did. I forget whether or not. I don't think it doesn't end up actually doing him anything.
This has, this
actually,
has
no, they do.
echoes-
I remember now. They do in fact actually give him the letter.
This has echoes of a story I heard recently about a journalist who got tackled while covering protests over here a couple weeks ago, wherever it was in this hellscape that we currently inhabit temporally. And the police sent them a statement saying that it was their fault that they didn't clearly declare
Yep.
who and what they were and expected them to sign it and return it. Like, they beat them, and it's like, sign this and say it was okay. I feel it's the same fucking shit.
Anyways, he also appoints a wounded discharged SS officer who's recovering in the town in Wargel nearby.
Okay.
That he knew fairly closely to take responsibility for them. And this guy's name was SS Captain Kurt Schrader. He will actually end up fighting alongside the prisoners. He's part of the SS. He basically mostly served, best I could tell, in bureaucratic positions. He was an adjutant.
Pencil pusher.
Yeah. In all over the place. Prague, briefly in Leningrad, till he got injured like a week after he got there. Serbia, Ukraine, and eventually France. Eventually, Witter, who he knew from when he was in Prague, manages to find his family a place in Wargl to settle because he wanted to move them out of the cities that were being bombed. So that's why he ends up being in the area after he's injured again in France and gets himself transferred to the hospital there so he can be close to his family. And eventually gets discharged to where he basically just has to go to the hospital to check up.
Okay.
And when he would go to the hospital to check up, he'd meet the car that would take him at the castle. And while he would do this, he would start talking with the prisoners, and they actually got to having good discussions and shit. And eventually, he would just start visiting, making friendly visits to talk to people.
Wait, the Nazis allowed visitors?
Well, considering it was another Nazi.
Conjugal visits.
I mean,
although by this point, pretty much after the July plot, when they try to kill Hitler, he basically just kind of says, all right, I admit it, these guys were all nuts. He doesn't actually start doing anything actively, but he's just kind of like, fuck it.
he's sort of
Screw
John
Hitler.
Bolton's it. I'm not going back on anything I've said before, but fuck him.
Yeah. Yeah, and he actually starts bringing his family around. He really starts striking up a relationship with these people. The cook there, Andreas Krobat, who's the Czech cook.
I love that because that sounds like a communist transformer.
Now this guy isn't a communist, as far as I know.
I don't care. His name sounds like a communist transformer. I expect that in the Soviet ripoff of Transformers that's somehow even cheaperly animated.
Yeah, he actually becomes real close with them after he starts making sweets and stuff for his kids, and the two of them become real good friends. Eventually, on I believe it's on the third or the fourth. It was on the 4th, yeah. On the 4th, Wimmer, after he gets that letter from the VIPs, he and his men leave.
Yeah.
So the prisoners at this point are ostensibly free. There's nobody guarding them anymore except for
the only chains are in
Schrader.
your mind.
Schrader's the only one who's technically in charge of them at this point, which doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So it's kind of like, what do we do now? They basically decide to do three things at this point. They basically, using different blankets and stuff that they find, fashion a giant French tricolor flag and hang it up on top of the roof of the thing, both so it can be seen both from people coming down the road.
That's
know that
awesome.
they're there.
Declaring their
That's really awesome.
freedom.
You can't do that with the American flag. Ours is way too hard.
Also,
You're going to end up with 47 stars because somebody was just like, screw it. That's enough. That's close enough.
Also, it's upward pointed so that nobody bombs them. The Allies don't bomb
Okay,
them by
yep.
accident.
Declaring that, hey, there's innocent people here.
We are
Help.
Frenchmen down here. Don't bomb us.
I find that the thread really gets lost a lot on the role of reconnaissance planes during the Second World War. People mention it, but people really lose the thread of how integral that was to literally every single movement and decision that was made.
Yeah.
It's like an aerial reconnaissance told them this, and then they never touch on it again, and it's just this assumed upon thing. No, that was revolutionary. That changed warfare.
Well, it wasn't revolutionary at that point, but it was commonplace at that point. But it was still a vital part of the war machine and dangerous.
It was
quite
much
often.
more important
It being
than the
commonplace
previous
is the
World
revolution
War.
I speak to. World War I showed that if you had eyes in the sky, you were gonna fucking prosper.
By the end of World War I, it was in fact commonplace.
No, I
That is
understand,
my point,
but this is where it was from day.
Different war.
Anyways, the second thing they do is, like I said before, they call Schroeder and ask him to help. Not because Wimmer said he was the guy in charge, just because they knew him, they were friends with him, and it was a guy that's like, hey,
He'd spent the time
they
making
help us.
friends with them.
Hey, these guys in the black outfits with the shiny boots, they listen to you, right? Right? They're that's like their job. They're supposed to do what you
Yeah.
say. Yeah. Can you tell them to go away?
yeah. Which, he can't at this point, but they're not going to listen to him. But he does agree that he's going to stay with them and he'll help them best he can. He moves his family into the castle with them so that they're all in
That's
the same
a hell
boat.
of a show of solidarity.
Yeah.
if you can't stop it entirely, at least become part of it so you can guide which direction it's going.
If you're willing to put your kids back against the same wall as the people you're defending, that's a fucking statement.
Yeah.
Then the third thing is because Kukovic hadn't come back yet, because he had to spend the night, they figure he must not have gotten lost or captured or whatever, so they send Crowbot, the cook, out to go and try and find the Americans
Crowbot.
again.
Cooks in disguise.
Crowbot. It's probably Crowbat, not
I don't
Or
care.
Crabo
I
or
don't
something
care.
like that.
I've already said
I
it.
so don't
It's
care.
his thing now. Anyways,
So they send the cook
yeah.
out to...
So he makes it. He doesn't go to Innsbruck.
I will
he
mute
goes to
your mic.
he goes to Wurgel, and
I'm done.
he manages to, by talking to some individuals, manages to make contact with the Austrian Resistance, who take him to see Major Gongol, the German army officer. Gongol decides that basically he's only got about a dozen guys with him at this point. That's not enough to actually, fight the SS, who
Right.
presumably who got heavy artillery, tanks, Panzerfaust, and shit. So the best thing they can do is get the Americans. Do what they originally doing.
Okay.
Go find the Americans and try and get them there.
Yeah, get some backup.
Yeah. So so he so that afternoon, on 3:00 that afternoon, he and his driver set out in their car to go find the Americans, who they think are about 7 miles away in Kufstein, town of Kufstein, which they are. They managed to find them, meet up with them.
The name of that town sounds like a coronavirus risk. I don't want a stein that someone's been coughing in.
Not cough.
Kufstein. That's another one I had to write down phonetically. So it may or may not be.
It's probably Kopstein.
Yeah.
You're probably still wrong. Like, we're not Europeans.
No. Anyways,
We're Americans. We don't know shit about the outside world. That's not our problem.
he meets up with Captain John Lee, who's a commander of a tank battalion, and or a company, I think. He's a captain. He's probably a company. Who gets permission from his superiors to go ahead and set out to try and rescue the VIPs, and is promised by his regimental commander, Colonel Lynch, that the 2nd Battalion under Lieutenant Colonel Coyle will be right behind them.
Okay.
Right? As soon as they do what they got to do, they will come in to reinforce them.
You guys go in, break things up, and you'll have allies. You'll
Go
have the
secure the
cavalry
area.
coming.
Take care of these guys, and we will send
It's always easier
reinforcements.
to get guys to charge in when you tell them there's more guys behind them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. When you know the cavalry's on its way, you're more willing to take the chance.
Yeah. Also that day, earlier in the day, Kukovic and a American officer named Major Kramers, battalion commander, they do finally set out towards the castle with a couple of guys in a couple of jeeps and 3 Sherman tanks. Though just east of the town of Rottenburg, they're stopped by some USGIs who tell them that the town ahead is occupied with a whole bunch of SS guys, so they're forced to turn
Good
back.
information for them.
Yeah,
'Cause
no,
they
it's
don't
good
have-
to know.
Yeah, because they don't have anywhere near enough guys.
That's the last thing you want to do. You just roll into town, walk into the bar, like, I'm thirsty, look up. Oh. And it's just a room full of black uniforms.
Yeah.
This
So-
isn't where I parked my Flammenwerfen.
Wrong.
Well, he's an American, like he'd know.
Yeah.
This isn't the American pig costume party.
So they turn back to Innsbruck. They go back, and
In
he manages.
English, you don't even say it in German.
Right.
He manages to get together a bigger force. This time, like 4 M10 tank destroyers, 3 jeeps with 50 caliber machine guns, a truck full of truck with a platoon of infantry, and then an empty truck to carry the VIPs in.
Right.
And they set back out. Back out again. They also got a couple of war correspondents who decided to go with them.
Well,
So it's
yeah,
like,
you gotta
sure,
have
go ahead.
reporters.
Back in
You just bypass highlighting everything and just put a block around
what I
it.
yes, yes, yeah. At that
What
point,
the fuck did you cut down?
mostly in that first part that we've already covered. The rest of it, I kind of stopped cutting
So
down.
then you didn't. You just didn't.
Well, I was trying to. I told you I was trying to limit how much time I spend in each section, but we've kind of blown that out of the water. So now I'm just trying to get to the end before we hit the way too long.
So when do the Germans join the Americans? Let's get to the actual interesting part.
Well, if you'll let me.
No, just
Talk.
do it. I'm
Anyways,
not letting you do anything. You have to assert
back
yourself.
again, going back again to the time of Virgil. Lee decides rather than before you launch a full-scale rescue mission, he's going to do some personal recon. So him and Virgil's driver and a couple other guys get in their car and they drive off to go to the castle.
Yeah.
They get back to they get what?
We're waiting. Dramatic reveal. They are.
Anyways, when they get back to Virgil, because they were the Americans were actually to the west of the city, Gongol like formally surrenders, his men or whatever, and then immediately gets told by the Americans, all right, well now you're working with us.
Right.
So and then
At which point the SS find out and decide
if you
to kill
aim
them
your
all.
guns in the same direction as us.
Yeah, and so then they start coordinating. The Americans, the Germans, and the Austrian resistance guys start coordinating and planning and figure out what the best way to go to the castle is. And then they arrive in the castle about sometime about 7 o'clock that evening. What was it? Okay, yeah, that's right. After he gets to the castle, he stops there briefly. Leaves a couple of guys there. They set back out again. And then he's informed by his superiors over the radio that because another unit is moving into the area, that's no longer their jurisdiction, so they can't send the reinforcements because military bureaucracy. So he has to go around and scrape up a bunch of
I find it funny that
extraneous
in the
units.
military you have jurisdictions. It's like they have guns. Really? Really?
Well, in the broader sense, it makes sense because you don't want military units, crossing across each other's lines of march. That's what it's supposed to prevent.
That and it's part of the goal of keeping the line intact across a broad area, so that one group or another doesn't leave a hole.
If you've got two units supply chains that are crossing each other over a narrow road network, that creates problems. That's what it's meant to do. In this case, it's a case of it being stupid and micromanaging.
Yeah, this is a bad case of it.
Yeah.
But it does do good across a war
Yeah,
front.
it is a way of keeping the logistics straight. But, so he basically scrapes up different guys and units from basically other nearby units from the units that are moving in. So he picks up 5 tanks and 5 squads of infantry, and they set back out again. And unfortunately, they run into a collapsed bridge and a number of other problems. I think one's a giant shell crater. Most of the tanks and a lot of the guys are forced to be left behind.
Yeah.
So they actually get back to the castle. All they've got is 1 tank, 10 Americans, and 15 Germans. That's all they've got.
So 25 guys in a tank.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, that tank is worth at least 6 guys. Minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Considering
I
what
mean,
the,
of course, it takes 3 to operate it, but
5.
Yeah, but that's worth
5?
at least 6.
Yeah, five guys.
well, then those 6 guys are if 5 of them are operating it, that's just 1 extra guy.
That's still 1 extra guy, though.
Anyways.
Anyway, so
okay,
so basically what they've actually got is they've got a Kar 98, which I think is like a heavy machine gun, German heavy machine gun, M1 Grand rifles, some MP40 submachine guns, M3 submachine guns, a BAR.
For the record, it's Garand.
Whatever.
Motherfucker, do not insult that rifle.
I'm not insulting it.
Yes, you are.
I'm not insulting the rifle. I'm dismissing your comment.
That rifle preserved your liberties. Pay some respect, son.
Yeah, miscellaneous hand grenades, pistols.
Miscellaneous munitions
and then,
to arm the 25 guys.
Yeah, and then
plus a tank.
And then the tank, which has a 30 caliber.
What kind of tank? He can tell us everything about it.
A M4 Sherman.
Pretty common workhorse of
Yeah.
the American military, mass-produced. There's numerous offshoot models that basically use the same frame.
Specifically,
Like I said, name
this
the
model,
tank and he can tell us everything
Well,
about it.
Sherman's stupid common. Like,
Yeah.
We built a
Well,
fuck ton
and
of them.
there's a lot of variants. But this one has a couple of 30 caliber machine guns, a 50 caliber machine gun, and a 76 millimeter cannon.
Okay.
So
Decent armament for a small crew.
for a
of
small
guys.
tank, yeah.
I mean, that's reasonably light, but it's still a fucking tank.
And
That's still
how
gonna
many
punch through a lot
SS
of
people
artillery.
are they about to go to war with?
Well, you said that was the 75 millimeter cannon,
76 millimeter.
76 millimeter.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, considering I believe the German anti-tank gun at that point was an 81 or 88 millimeter.
88 millimeter.
Yeah, that's not a huge difference.
An 88 millimeter German 88 millimeter anti-tank cannons, or some of the
Started
most
as anti-flat guns,
Yes.
but then they realized
Yep.
they work better when you point them at the ground.
Yeah. they eat the Shermans. No, the
Oh,
armor on
Sherman's-
those things are
yeah,
pathetic.
no. It was
Right.
tinfoil armor. We built 1,000,000 of the fucking things and just
Yeah.
spitballed them onto the
They-
battlefield.
they
That was
were
our
built-
strategy.
They were
Yeah.
built to be modular, not strong.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's a big reason as to why the American war machine functioned. We could just keep cannibalizing our shit in the field to keep other shit running. The Germans really couldn't.
Yeah. Despite the fact of only having these few guys, with the weapons they had, they actually had a pretty good defense they could set up. Mostly because of surrounded by a ravine. It's a bloody castle, which is
Yeah,
still
that
a
was gonna be my
fortification.
next question was, okay, we know what the American forces had. What kind of forces do the SS have? Yes, they've got a castle, so good defenses.
Well,
How many
eventually-
guys
Well, no.
did they actually have?
The SS are the bad guys. These
Yeah.
are Wehrmacht.
Yeah, I'm asking about.
The
We
ba-
heard
the
about
bad
the
guys.
good guys. Now let's hear about the bad guys.
The bad guys, they don't know it yet, but the bad guys will eventually end up with mostly heavy machine guns, similar to they have, but they do end up with some 88 millimeter and a couple lighter cannons.
Okay.
That'll fuck someone.
Which,
Yeah.
yeah, so the Germans do have one of the few things that will really screw their day. Their major thing is, if you're looking at
Now,
the map,
those 88s, are they on like an anti-tank platform, or do they have like one of the actual tanks that had an 88 mounted? Because that became pretty stock.
I
later
believe
on.
it was just an independent cannon. I don't believe it was attached to a
just
tank.
artillery piece.
It was an artillery
Okay.
piece, yes. It was not attached to a cannon or tank, excuse me. I mean, basically, their defense is relying on the fact that you've got this castle that's basically a triangle, and at the entrance point is at the tip there,
Yeah, forces you to kind of
right? And then the
choke
bridge
point.
coming across the ravine there. They basically position the tank like right here or right up here, where it's basically at a bottleneck.
Use the natural choke point.
The road itself is only wide enough for the tank itself. In fact, Lee actually has to order the tank to back up from the town onto the bridge because it's so narrow. There's not enough room for it to turn around.
Okay.
That's how narrow of an approach we're talking about.
One tank wide, barely.
Yeah, barely one tank wide. Yeah,
There were a lot of military maneuvers that had choke points like that.
Oh yeah.
yeah. So considering what they've got and how many of them there are, this is a very good defensive position. Okay. For the record, I just skipped like half of that. So.
Good. I see no highlighter here, so let's just move on. Oh, yep, we're good. Let's keep moving.
For the record, those 2 pages are pretty much the entire battle. But
Summarize.
So you want to skip? A battle was had, people died. That's how Nick wants us to move on.
yeah,
People
well, I am
died,
going to do my best to try because of the time. I am going to try and summarize as best I can here.
Eventually, we'll shame him into like moderate notes. Eventually.
It's better I have too much information than not enough. You yourself said that.
Don't use my words against me.
It's way too easy for one thing.
Yeah, no. What are you doing? Playing on easy? Come on. Where's the challenge?
All right. On May 5th, around 4 a.m., the beginnings of fighting start. Lee wakes up to the sound of gunfire. Not in the main attack yet. The main SS forces haven't arrived. It's basically a low-level probing attack, just to kind of measure and see what their defenses are. They kind of attack up front a little bit, although they stop that once they realize tank. They actually get guys with grappling hooks who will go down into the ravine and start trying to climb up the wall out of the ravine. Those guys don't last long.
Well, they didn't have the high ground, Alan.
Yeah.
They were attempting to gain the high ground.
True. Although this is one case where that is actually a valid tactic.
Yeah.
Or
Alan,
statement
that
of
is
fact.
always a valid tactic.
But,
If I have learned anything in this lifetime, it's maintain the high ground. Otherwise, you're going to get chopped in half. That's just how shit works.
or in this case, gunned down. But
Yeah.
still valid.
You can get chopped in half by bullets.
Lee gets really frustrated with the
Takes
VIP.
a lot of them, but you can do it.
He gets really frustrated with the VIPs because they just basically start ignoring the fact that there's a battle going on and come upstairs. They had all been down in the basement.
Okay.
Complaining, we can't be down there.
Bored.
Actually, it was, we're cold. It's too cold down there. We'd rather be up here where it's warmer.
Still a bunch of fucking 6-year-olds, but
Sure, there's bullets flying around, but this is at least more comfortable, yeah?
Yeah. Later on
no, it's
that
just
day,
all the French they're smoking down there. If we die, we die. It was a beautiful laugh.
later on that day, there's another probing attack where Deladier almost gets himself killed. Is a near miss while he's just casually walking in the courtyard.
It's time to be cold in the grave. I will stretch my legs.
Then on the 5th, morning of the 5th, Lieutenant Colonel Coyle, back with the 2nd Battalion, the guys that were promised to be the reinforcements,
Right.
they get
I'm
delayed.
just picturing Calculon in a military uniform.
They get further delayed by SS road barricades, and another blown bridge. So they're
Further
still not.
delay,
Yeah, they
not
should.
coming.
Yeah, they should have been there already. They're still not coming. Also, when they actually get to Virgil, Coyle, despite what the Austrians telling them that we've already checked the town, the town's clear,
They
insists
decide to search the whole town.
to be safe, and that takes a number of hours. That further delays them.
Hey, think about it this way. He's got a lot of men under his command, and a stray bullet is very easy to catch.
No, I understand that, but
Yeah.
and he had no way of knowing how desperately he was needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I mean, it's a safety thing. If they were wrong and they moved into the town and there's guys there,
He could
they
have
get-
lost his company before they made it to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ambush. You
No,
know.
Discretion being
there
the
were
better part of
very
valor
good
and all
Yeah.
reasons for why he did what he did. It's only looking at the grander picture afterwards that we can criticize.
Yeah.
At
Oh,
the
yeah, no,
time,
no,
he did
hindsight's-
everything correct.
Yeah.
Hindsight's 20/20, and that's always the issue.
Yeah.
Then back on the other end, you've got Kramer's and his force. They start getting attacked by SS units with mentioned artillery. When he calls in for
That's got to
reinforcements,
be shredding the fucking walls of that castle. 88's ain't a joke.
yeah. Although at this point, not at the castle, they're still on their way. Yeah, they're coming from Innsbruck. They're still between Innsbruck and the castle. They
That's them coming.
actually no. Oh, they're on their way to Virgil. So they're coming from
They're coming from this away.
they're coming
Yeah,
from
that
way over
direction.
here, and they're going to this.
Okay.
Is what they're doing.
Coming up from the rear side of the castle.
Yeah, it's mountain territory, so there's a lot of winding roads, so it's not a clear shot.
Right.
Nothing is a straight line.
Right.
Yeah.
Thus, all the bridges that got blown out to delay them.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Something can be a mile down the road, but it's a 5-mile trip to get there.
That's where you
Oh,
hear
yeah.
about. Yeah, sure, it's a mile as the bird flies.
Yeah, a lot
But
of
it's a
these
10-mile
trips.
trip.
Dude, just like going out
subject
to
to
like
that.
Colorado to snowboard when I was a teenager. No, there's a huge difference between the distance between locations and the distance you will travel between locations.
Right.
Well, anyways, so he calls in for reinforcements, and he hears back from the chief of staff of the 103rd U.S. Division, Colonel Malloy. Not only does he tell him that you are not getting reinforcements, but mimicking what happened with Lee, he tells him you are ordered to turn your entire force back around because you are in danger of crossing into another division's territory.
No.
Yeah.
No,
No.
we're at a battle. We're not just no.
Needless to say, Kramer's a little irked by this. In the
Just
politest
a wee
way
bit
possible.
miffed.
Yeah, in the politest way possible, tries to get the colonel to reconsider because he's a colonel and he's a major.
Yeah, that's
can't
the way
yell at him.
rank works.
Yeah, he doesn't. So what he basically does is he sends most of that force back, and then just him and another jeep, the guys in his jeep, another jeep, the truck for the prisoners, and what was it? And the four or no, not even the it doesn't even have the tank destroyers. Just the two jeep. This the guys in the two jeeps and the empty truck. You see,
That's
continue
super
on to the
fucking
castle.
helpful against 88s. That's super fucking helpful.
Yeah, admittedly, he doesn't know he's going to face it. They're going to have to face 88s.
Okay, so this is still before shots have been fired.
Early on the previous day, there's been some skirmish battles.
Okay.
Yeah, they
The
haven't
main
had
force
the
hasn't.
artillery yet.
The main enemy hasn't
Okay.
arrived yet. They've just been trying to determine what the American positions are. And
Right.
Yeah.
And the SS are still in control of the.
no.
No.
No. Okay, so at this point, the Americans
Lee-
have
Joint
gotten in.
Wehrmacht American control.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got two different groups of Americans that are on their way. Actually, at this point, I think there's
And the
Right,
SS
yeah,
are
two.
all in Itter.
the SS guys are. There's not a lot of actual detail about what the SS guys are doing at this point in time, just because they're kind of a random group and
Okay.
they end up scattering after this.
scattered.
We don't know
Okay.
a lot about the actual nature of the. Mostly, it's entirely from their perspective. What we know
So-
about the battle.
What is keeping the Americans and the Germans from loading these VIPs up in the truck and sending it
The
back?
truck isn't there yet. All that's
Oh,
arrived was
okay.
Lee came and arrived in his jeep, and then has gone back to get bring the actual
Okay,
forces.
So
So he's been there.
They
The tournament
really
was
should have
going on.
gotten a weapons platform with that. They really
Right.
should have.
Yeah.
I thought at
It'll
this
slow
point
them
they
to a
already
crawl,
had a
but they
tank and
really
everything
should.
here.
So now you've got two groups of Americans who are struggling to get there through due to enemy activity and bureaucratic bullshit,
Right.
and an unknown number of SS units in the area that may or may not be attacking at any moment. They don't know about. Right, and at this point, they're just everybody's trying to beat the clock.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, on that morning around 8 o'clock, worrying thing happens. One of the Germans defending the castle, because at this point, by this point, Lee makes it there first, with just with the one tank,
Right.
and those guys and his guys. One of the Germans basically hops a wall and goes running off, presumably to go to the SS guys because he's afraid to say.
Dieter's just out.
Yeah, which at this point now means, okay, this guy knows what our defensive positions and our status are. This guy just got away with a lot of really juicy intel. This is bad. They try shooting him. They try to stop him.
Well,
but,
I assume they try shooting him. That's usually the
But they
military's
don't know.
first effort.
yeah, but they don't.
If they
Succeed.
can't solve their problem with bullets, that's usually an issue for them.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a mosquito.
Oh, it's a mosquito.
Yeah.
About a half hour later, Lee's standing on top of the tower, basically the castle keep. This is where the 88s come into play. He sees an 20 millimeter anti-air cannon and an 88 millimeter gun being placed about 800 yards to the northwest of the castle. Right, so somewhere in this area.
Okay, now you said that side was mostly mountain.
Basically, it's
Because you said there was a ravine kind of slant down that
Oh,
side,
the
a
ravine
sharp
is-
ravine on that end.
yeah, it's basically a giant hill in a hole, in a big hole that happens to be steeper on this
Okay.
end, and then it comes back up again, and it's all woods.
Okay, so
Around- except for
they're
over here is the
they're
town.
setting up the cannon on the rise over there.
Somewhere over here on the other side of the
Okay.
ravine, fairly close, they're setting up the two big cannons.
Okay.
Right, so now they know the heavy shit's arriving. Shit's going down. They decide we need to try and get word out.
The angle I would choose if I was assaulting this place, but
Anyways, they decide they need to get word out again. Schrader comes up with the idea of, if we tried the telephone, call the town of Wargle where all my guys are. They do. It works. They get in touch with.
No one tried the fucking phone.
Well, it's a question of who you're gonna call.
Ghostbusters, that's not the point.
I'm ashamed of myself for walking into
Well,
that.
you should
you
be.
should be.
Yeah. But yeah, so they get in touch with them. They promise they'll.
Next time on.
Yeah, they get in touch with the Austrian Resistance guys back in the town, who say, "All right, we see first American we see, we will tell them to hurry their asses up." Also, I can spare.
Old. All those fucking trucks are gonna ruin that. We're gonna have to fuck with it. Go now.
Okay. Yeah, the Austrian guys say, "Well, first Americans we see, we'll send them your way." Also, I can spare 2 guys. I will send 2 guys in a car to join you at the castle.
At this point,
Which he
every
does.
guy helps.
Yeah, which he does, and then they make their way up there fairly uneventfully. Right, so they.
So
Yeah.
by my count, the defending does he still have the 25 guys he came in with, or is that
Yes.
the group coming from?
24 now. The one guy ran
Okay.
off.
Yeah.
The one German dude ran
Yeah,
off.
Dieter's like, I'm out.
Right.
I did not sign up for this.
Okay, so
Yeah.
they have 24 guys, but no tank.
Right. With the 2 guys, I know I mentioned the 2 guys for a reason. When they get to the castle, there's already a group of SS men like setting up a station. In order to get by these guys, since they're Germans in a German car, they decide we're just gonna bolt it past them, honking our horn for them to get out of the way, and see if they just move, and it works.
Wow.
Nice.
They
Wow.
totally
They just
bluff.
charged the.
They bluff their way by
You know,
by being fast and noisy.
That's the funny thing. As much as people have supreme confidence in like military training and like hierarchy and
when
command
there's
structures,
a car coming at you, you get out of the way.
nothing actually overrides basic human behavior. You're still the same dumb meat animal susceptible to the same dumb tricks.
Well, that's the point of basic training is they attempt to break you of those.
you're still the same dumb meat animal. There's no fixing that. It's what we are. We're just dumb meat animals.
Right. Then about 10 o'clock that morning, as we Wrangle's checking positions and stuff in the castle, spots the VIPs upstairs again. They're with their families. They're all just out in the courtyard. Before
It's such a lovely day. It'd be a shame to spend it inside.
as he goes to chastise him,
There's no Rona. What do they have to worry about?
He's gonna go
A
and
war?
he's gonna go and tell them to all go back downstairs. Before he has a chance to, the German cannons start opening fire.
Nice.
This
Kind
is
of
the-
makes his point for
Yeah,
him.
this is the start of the actual main battle now.
Awesome.
Right. Almost immediately, the tank takes a lethal hit from the 88 millimeter.
It don't take much to kill a Sherman.
Yeah.
Bye-bye,
while,
tank.
while the one guy is in there trying to fix the radio because the radio's been out.
So we're down to 23.
Actually, no. The round misses him and like the ammunition thing or whatever, like just barely goes through the tank, and the dude manages to scramble out of the tank a split second before the thing blows up, action movie style.
Lucky bastard.
Right.
That's
He
awesome.
got so lucky that did
Yeah.
not hit the magazine. Like, no
Right.
fucking
Yeah,
joke.
no, like just barely, like this narrow corridor that could have taken through the tank where it didn't hit anything, and it just hits that right corridor.
It's like that shit when somebody gets shot in the head and lives. It's like, what?
Yeah, yeah, no, everybody.
It's okay, it was a through
Yeah.
and through. That explains nothing.
Yeah, no, his buddies all thought he was dead. Eventually, he climbs out of the tank and has to go like crawling on the ground around like this, like around the couple of positions
I
to
think
get
you're
to
legally
somewhere
allowed
else.
to just play dead and have the rest of the day off at that point.
Yeah.
I think you're allowed to do that
So,
after
yeah,
that.
eventually, his buddies just see him kind of crawling around a corner, like, dude, how the hell are you alive?
That's pretty epic.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
the
they
final
open fire. The tank guy manages to survive.
Yeah. Schroeder's
Do
wife.
the VIPs get the message now?
Well, Schroeder's wife actually gets injured by some like rock debris coming off the walls of the
Shrapnel.
castle. Shrapnel
Yeah.
from the. She gets pretty substantially injured. Not like critically. She's not going to die,
But she bleeding.
yeah, she's bleeding. She's pretty badly injured. At that point, Renault, Clemenceau, Delaroche, Gamelan, and Barotra all grab weapons that they had taken out of the castle's like armory or whatever that had been left
That
behind.
tennis player was like, "You just lowered the vagina count in this room,
Yeah.
and I cannot accept this."
Yeah, and they all go in to just out to the front line to take up positions. And for the record, all what is it? 45 of these guys had actual military combat experience. I mean, was it?
Well, they'd all lived through
quite
the
a
First
few,
World
quite a
War.
few of them were ex-military leaders. So,
Gamelan was former head of the French army.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
They
these
had
guys,
experience.
a
yeah.
couple
So-
of them knew their way around a gun.
yeah, they knew what they were doing.
So our
It's
forces
been a while
now
from all of them, but-
roughly equal, what, 29?
So yeah, at this point
Armed
it's
men
like
at this point?
it was what was it?
Realistically,
24,
you're never
25,
looking
26,
past
20.
30 in this entire thing.
So you got about 30 guys, 30, 31 guys now.
It's a small number, and that's part of what makes this so weird.
Yeah.
30 men can defend a castle for a long time.
Yeah.
One man in a proper position can do a lot of damage.
Exactly.
I believe the like basic, not taking anything else into account, recommended numbers for assaulting a fortified position is at least 4 times the number of the defenders.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need. So, and the number of SS guys I think will number in the hundreds. I don't think they actually have thousands of guys. There's only like 3,000 German forces total in the area,
Right.
so it can't be that big.
Well, you had mentioned that a lot of SS were passing through the area, so I figured it would be somewhere
Yeah.
in the hundreds.
These guys are a threat to them not because of their numbers, but because of the hardware they have.
Okay, well,
The
SS,
cannons and all that.
They had all the.
They've got
fun
heavy
shit.
artillery and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the VIPs start taking up the fight. When Renault, is that how I was saying it? Renault.
Renault.
I
Renault,
believe,
yeah.
Yes.
It sounded weird in my head for a minute for some reason. He tries to move up to a more forward position near the castle gatehouse, so like way the hell up here.
Up where the tank was shot down.
The tank is like right there, so not that far behind. Because you got like tank, guardhouse, gate.
Okay.
Wargle sees that and goes to run to try and tell him to get down. Unfortunately, when doing this, he gets up himself, and he only makes it about 10 feet before he takes a sniper shot to the head.
Ooh. Now, Now, most of the SS positions are coming from the
They're
northern, western
pretty-
area, or have they managed to?
By this point, they've
surround?
circled the whole area.
Okay,
They've been
okay.
they've been in the area for a couple of days now. They've managed to set up
okay.
positions all over the place.
Yeah, no, they are surrounded.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe most of the actual guys trying to get into the castle are attacking from this side and from here.
From the slope they
That's
can
where the gate
actually
is.
climb,
Yeah, that's-
and
I
where
believe there's
the
also
gate is.
I believe there's also a entryway into the castle on this slope.
Probably.
Built into the wall. If
Probably
I remember
like
the
a
pictures I
servant's
saw.
entrance or something.
Yeah, if I remember the pictures correctly, which is why they were going up that way. And as it turns out, Vorgel will actually be the only good guy casualty
Okay.
in the entire battle. He's the one
Wow.
death. Other people are injured, but he's the only one who actually dies.
Okay.
Now,
So he takes a sniper's bullet.
yeah. Then basically Lee gives order to his number 2 guy, his second in command, Lieutenant Bass. Orders to hold the gatehouse, hold this forward position here as long as you can, and then start moving back to the main building, because it's getting to the point now where they realize
They've got to hold
yeah
up.
they're starting to run out of ammunition. Most of them only have a couple of clips left. One
Okay.
guy's got no more bullets at all. At this point they are really relying on somebody to get there before they just run out of
Right.
bullets.
Where are those reinforcements?
Yeah.
Are they still making their way around blown out bridges and stuff?
Yeah, well, eventually, Kramer's and his force gets to Vorgel, where he runs into the tank, a tank Lee had left behind in the town. One of the tanks he lost. Most of them he lost because of a bridge they couldn't cross. This one, we don't really know why he left this tank here. It's kind of a mystery. Presumably to protect the town or something like that, but they don't know.
They never asked him.
We don't really know why exactly. That this is not recorded in history. And then ask this guy, what's going on, and they can say they're close enough now. They hear the gunfire coming from it, and they see the smoke that they presume is, given how much smoke and all that, this is probably
Right.
the tank.
Right.
So they've probably they're under attack. They've lost their tank. They're kind of screwed. They really need help.
Which they do.
Yeah, so again, somebody has the first as they're contemplating what they're going to do next, other American units are finally starting to arrive. Units of the I believe it was from the 653rd Tank Battalion. Plus several half-tracks full of guys from the 142nd Infantry Company.
Okay.
Or Infantry Company. The 142nd Infantry Battalion's Company E. Yeah. That's the same unit that the colonel promised the reinforcements would come from. The lead elements of Coil's guys, basically,
Yes.
is what this is. Are coming into town.
They see the tank, realize that shit's gone wrong.
Unfortunately, the guy in charge of this particular platoon, Captain Gill, hasn't gotten the word yet that this mission's going to happen. So when Kramer tells him we got to go rescue these VIPs, he's kind of like, I don't know about that. I haven't got any orders about that. That seems kind of dicey. I gotta get orders from the colonel before I'll do this. Well, where's the colonel? He actually just started going back the other way, back to division headquarters.
Oh shit.
So Kramer's and another guy get in a jeep
They
to go
can't
run
get
after
a hold
him.
of him until they send a runner or he gets back.
Yeah, so Kramer's and another guy, a couple of guys get in a jeep and go run after him. Fortunately, here the roads are actually clear, and they actually managed to get the colonel to the colonel fairly quickly.
Okay.
Who sends a message back with them? By all means, help these guys. Do whatever you have to do. Help these guys get up the mountain.
Right.
Right. So they get back, and Gill decides he's going to leave one of his platoons in town, and then he's going to take his remaining 3 platoons nearby Company G. So another company of men. He requisitions the 2 guys Kramer's has with him, the couple of jeeps and an empty truck. The one Sherman they got left in the town now, and And also, he picks up the 3 Sherman tanks that Lee had left back at the busted bridge. So he's kind of gathering everybody together.
Yeah.
Right, we're kind of gathering up the full weight of forces in the area. Just
No.
Do I have to pull out that Lego horse for you to beat? Because we're reaching dead horse territory here.
and it's I'm on page 10. We're getting there.
And
We are getting
every
there.
time you interrupt him,
I'm making
we
good
stop.
time. Anyways, yes, I am.
Okay, so he's now got a force
So he's now got a group of guys. They're going down the road.
and a number of tanks, which it will be good.
And then about a
This
mile
situation.
down the road, they start running into more SS guys with heavy machine guns,
Okay.
which they have to deal with. They start making their way around these guys. And as they get closer to the castle, one of the platoon leaders is talking to this French reporter. He's actually a guy named Levesque, who will eventually become future Prime Minister of Quebec.
Interesting.
Which is an interesting little thing there. They think they see they see this guy who looks like a peasant or somebody just jogging down the road towards them. Turns out it's Barotra. It's the tennis star.
Awesome. The guy that
Please
ran
tell
away.
me he brought help.
What happened there was when Kramer actually before they had left, no, this is not the phone call.
communist
This is
guy.
Oh,
no.
okay. Yeah, the guy
No,
that
no.
ran away, right?
Barotra? No, this is the tennis star guy.
Okay, gotcha.
No, the communist guy is with Kramer's.
Gotcha.
He's not really doing anything in the story at this point. He's just kind of there, which is I mentioned him. But no, what happened was before they left Vorgel, somebody in Kramer's group actually also got up the idea of, hey, let's try using the phone and call the castle.
Jesus fucking Christ, are you kidding me? This really illustrates like how 90% of history is solved via cell phone. Like, this is some fucking bullshit. Go on, but this is bullshit.
So they contact the castle. They get on the phone just long enough for Lee to say, we're royally fucked, and Kramer's to say, we're coming. Then there's an explosion, and the line goes dead somewhere along the line.
Very
An
dramatic.
artillery shot had snapped the phone line. So on Lee's end, when they realized that this is a thing, they realized Lee didn't have enough time to give him the intel on how many enemies, what the positions were,
Right.
what the best way to get up to the castle was.
Operating entirely in the dark here.
So he wants to send some more of the help out or whatever, somebody out.
To get in for.
And Barotra volunteers and says, I've already tried to escape 3 times. I'm pretty familiar with the best way
I
down
got
the
this
mountain.
shit.
Right.
I'm pretty good
I
at
got
not
this.
getting shot by Nazis.
I got this.
I've got some skills on
Yeah,
this.
so he dresses up as a Austrian peasant, jumps the wall, and starts sneaking down through the woods. Manages to sneak past a couple of SS patrols, or whatever. When he comes out of the woods, he runs in like right up, face to face with 2 Germans with a mounted machine gun. He decides. So at this point, he's going to
So
decide
it's fortunate.
his best chance is to just fake being an Austrian peasant. So he just kind of casually starts walking around, starts picking up herbs off the ground, and then just stops and takes a leak on a tree. And this works. The Germans just think he's just some dumb schmuck.
Balls of steel.
Hey,
So-
right
if
there.
you are redneck enough, you are
Oh.
non-threatening.
Yeah.
because-
So he just turns, smiles as he wades across the nearby Inn River. INN. Inn. It's
Inn.
spelled
Yeah.
in the Inn
Yeah,
River.
whatever.
And just as he gets up on the other side, just waves, smiles and waves, and continues down along the road.
That's awesome.
And when he eventually runs into Kramer's and these guys, and tells them what's going on, tells them this is what the situation is, this is the route you need to take, and just I want
Lays
you
everything out.
yeah, just do me. I'll lead you guys up there. Just do me a favor. I want a gun and I want an American uniform and I want to be at the head of this thing. I want to be the first guy in to save my butt, to save everybody.
That's awesome.
Which they
And
do. They
that
give him
man
the
is a hero.
yeah.
The American uniform's what's got me. It's just like, Nah, give me some of them olives. Yeah, no, give me that shit.
I think he just wanted out of the peasant clothes.
Yeah, well, and they give it to him. They give him the gun and they give him the uniform.
After what this man just did, hell yeah, get this guy a gun and a uniform.
Was it like a big gun or was it like a 1911?
It's a submachine gun.
Okay, so big gun.
Yeah. Yeah, they make their way back up there where they kill the two guys he walked by, and capture a bunch of, like a dozen other SS guys they managed to capture.
Strip them of ammo.
Yeah. And then Lee realized, meanwhile, while this is all going on, Lee, they're finally reaching the end of their ammo, pulls everybody back to the keep, which is this tower on part of this main building here, to set up internal like defensive positions to kind of guard the stairwell and defend these guys.
They are ready for the
last
SS
stand
to be breaking in.
Right, he's setting up. They're not actually at that point yet, but he's setting up those positions in preparation for pulling back.
Preparing his fallback.
Yeah, at this point they're at the it's either this gate or this gate.
They are at the gates.
They are at the gates, and again, action movie style. Just as a German guy an SS guy walks up to the gate with a Panzerfaust, a German bazooka, is about ready to blow the gate open. All of a sudden, coming from behind them, you start hearing tank and gunfire as the Americans arrive.
Oh, beautiful!
And the SS guys start to scatter.
Beautiful.
So, and I love it.
The nick of time.
I love it. As they pull in, I think it's either, I forget whether it's Lee or Bass, walks up to Kramer's and just totally deadpan, kind of just stands there for a minute and goes, "What kept you?" So, yeah, so that's
awesome.
And like I said,
could have used this about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. So, at the end of the battle there, Wargo was the only casualty they suffered, or death, I should say. People were injured. Those are technical casualties. We don't know how many SS guys died. They certainly killed SS guys.
Not enough.
Yeah. But,
it's SS. I don't care. It wasn't all of them, so it wasn't enough.
Eventually, Colonel Lynch and the rest of the regiment all arrive. The other guys coming from the other direction all arrive, secure the location. All the SS guys in the local area all scatter and get taken care of because at this point full units are arriving.
Yep. They are now occupying this town from the SS. So.
Yeah.
Freedom, democracy, no Nazis.
They keep the guys there.
Except the ones that we take for our space program.
They keep the VIPs there for a couple of days. They figure out what they're gonna do until eventually they get the order from the division commander to on May 5th. At the end of the day, pardon me. At the end of the day, about 7 o'clock that evening, they all get loaded up in the truck and they get taken to Innsbruck. Moved to Innsbruck. So yeah, the next day, May 6th, they get taken across the German border to Augsburg, where they have dinner with the commander of the 7th Army, General Patch. Originally, he was gonna have them flown back from Augsburg, but the commander of the French First Army, General Delat, he wanted the honor of doing it because French and all that.
Right.
So
we couldn't help any of you, so let me be a doormat now.
Yeah. So the following day, May 7th, they're taken to his to Delat's headquarters in Lindau. When they arrive there, Vegan, Barotra, and Delaroc are all led away and taken into detention, being told that they are going to be put on trial for collaborating with the Vichy government. Because they had all served in the Vichy administration.
Previously, too.
With the Vichy government, briefly.
Right,
so they're going to be...
Even though they turned against the government and were then imprisoned for it, they still going to go on trial for what they did when they were
It's still the middle of the war. That's
Right.
not a matter of public record. What exactly? All they know is they worked for the collaborationist government. That's all they know at
Right.
this point.
So they're going to find out as much as they can.
Yeah. Yeah. Then the following day, May 8th, the war ends. Most of the remaining VIPs are driven to Strasbourg and are put on General de Gaulle's personal private plane, and flown to Paris.
Okay.
All except for Daladier, whose son was an aide to General Delat.
Okay.
So he was already there. So he and his dad just drove the rest of the way, drove back to Paris. Crowbot and the female Crowbot and the female number prisoners are all given like thorough medical exams because they are technically concentration camp prisoners.
Right.
Allowed to just kind of chill and rest for a few days, and then are taken to a UN displaced person center, where presumably they're all sent home. There's no more historical record of what actually happened to those individuals.
Okay.
The Unperson Center.
Kwokovich actually kind of manages to get himself a free trip to Paris out of all this.
Dude,
He goes to.
Does he visit the Eiffel Tower?
that is a fucking
don't know.
hustle.
Well, he goes to a
I
French.
got thrown in a Nazi internment camp, and all I got was a trip to Paris.
He goes to a French liaison officer named Eric Luton and tells him that
Stop. Truck's gonna destroy the audio.
Maybe not. This is actually a pretty good closed system.
Anyways,
but
trucks are gone.
Give it a 5.
So yeah, he goes to a French liaison officer and basically tells this guy, you know what? It'd probably be a good idea since the VIPs all got carried in this truck and they just had to take what they could carry with them. There's all this stuff of theirs. Maybe somebody should gather it all up and be responsible for getting it back to with them. It's like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, get their stuff
I'll do
back
it.
to them.
I'll do it. Sure. So he gathers it all up, ends up on a, I think he takes it, on a truck, where he accompanies the stuff to Paris, and then ordered he's got to report back to Virgil, the German, the French forces are in Strasbourg rather, by a certain date or whatever. So yeah, he gets to take a trip to Paris, hang out presumably for a day or so in Paris, and then go back. At which point they take him. Then they take him to that same UN facility or someplace else where he eventually gets repatriated back to Yugoslavia.
United Nations Person Center, not
Yes,
Unperson
yes.
Center.
The U.N. Person Center. The Unperson Center.
There are no periods. It's just UN.
Then it serves my point all the more.
There's probably a space between the N and the P.
They're both capitalized, clearly indicating that they are an acronym, not a word.
No, they're just really emphasizing that it's the Unperson Center.
If they wanted to do that, they wouldn't make them both capitals. They would bold them.
Maybe the entire thing is a bold idea, Alan.
Well, in that case, they would underline it as well to further emphasize. And if that didn't work, they'd make it put it in italics.
That's a stylistic faux pas according to every system of writing. No one underscores.
And if that didn't work, they'd use a larger font.
Again, that's not a literary thing. That's slop writing. That's hackery. I would expect that from Alex Jones.
No,
You guys sell me toothpaste with lead in it and tell me it's fighting the globalists?
no. Alex Jones would do it in Comic Sans.
You're probably not wrong. Like, you're probably not wrong. That is a trash font.
So before we devolve entirely into nonsense, is there
Right.
anything left here?
Basically just.
yeah, we're only on page 11.
Oh, jeez.
Most of the rest of it is that long because of formatting choices I made, but basically.
It's all formatting choices.
choices. Yeah.
Okay, so
Anyways, basically, just
I will meet you.
at this point, it's just a matter of who ends up where.
Yeah.
The castle itself gets ended up being used locally as a army command post for a little while.
Okay.
What's it for today? Is it still around?
It is still around today. I tried to do a Google image shot of it today. It's too blurry. That part of the camera footage there is,
Like, is
you can
it-
see it,
Like,
but
is
it's covered in
it
trees
a
and shit.
museum or something of the time now?
It
is
is-
it a hotel again?
It was was opened again as a hotel for a while, but eventually that closed, and it is now owned by a private individual, an attorney.
Okay.
There's an attorney, and it's just basically a private property.
Yeah.
You're not allowed on there. No one is. The guy just owns the thing. Yeah. With the individuals involved, Daladier goes on to serve in the Constituent Assembly, French Constituent Assembly after the war. Serves as mayor of Avignon in the 50s and dies in 1970. Gamelan didn't really do anything. Oh, of course, it goes without saying, pretty much all of these people all wrote memoirs of varying
Well, of
degrees of
course.
historical usefulness. Gamelan dies in 1958 at age 86.
When did he make the Wand of Gamelan that Zelda had to quest with?
That was a couple months before he died.
Philip CDI, motherfuckers, live with it!
Leon, last name none of us can say. He resumes leadership of the CGT labor group after the war. Eventually, he's forced to resign by the communist faction of the group
Okay.
for not being radical enough. He founds a left centrist group called the Workers'
You're
Force.
not communist enough for us? Get out.
Dude, that happens.
Yeah, especially in Europe, where being a communist is actually a relevant thing
Right.
over there.
Hey, we're getting there. We're starting to establish that there needs to be two separate wings for a political system to function.
Well, that's going to be the Social Democrats, not the Communists. But whereas in Europe, it's like the Social Democrats and
all
the
right,
Communists.
Alan, when we get rid of the fascists, then you can say the communists are bad, but as long as the fascists are there, we need communists to balance them out.
Anyways, he
Hey, don't get
Takes
mad at me.
control-
That's politics, man.
takes control of the CGT labor group, gets kicked out, founds a new group called the Workers' Force, which he's leader of till he dies. In addition, in 1947, he's elected president of the French National Economic Council. In 1951, he helps to establish the International Labor Organization. It's part of the UN.
All good things.
And in that same year, presumably for that work, is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
Nice.
He dies in 1954. Paul Renaud is elected to the Chamber of Deputies in 1946. Briefly serves as Minister of Finance and dies in 66, the age of 87. Barotra, the tennis guy, is never actually put on trial. They never
Of
actually
course
put him on
not.
trial.
Of course not.
He's a
Resumes,
celebrity.
They took one look at this man. It's like, you slay, don't you, sir? Yes, I do.
resumes both his tennis career and his he was owned a business before the war, was involved in business, took that back up again.
What was the business?
I don't remember.
I'm going to assume it was selling porcelain copies of his junk.
It was not that.
I'm going to assume it was that.
Sex trafficking.
It was some
No.
sort of trade and manufactured goods, I think.
It takes time to manufacture a porcelain dick.
Anyways, he's becomes vice president of the French Lawn Tennis Association.
Not surprising.
And continued to play in competitive tennis, like actual tennis, until he was in his 90s.
Like,
Wow.
this guy's interesting, but not
Old
interesting
dude.
enough to make me care about tennis. That's the only real problem.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
very interesting. I still don't care about
Yeah,
tennis.
it's tennis,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, dies in 1994, the age of 95.
Jeez.
Wow.
Like, wow.
Yeah.
No, he made it.
Augusta Bookland, Jojo, or the guy, the labor leader guy's mistress. They get married in 1948. She dies.
I love that anytime someone goes from mistress to wife, just because that's always hilarious to me. It's like, Why'd you make the decisions you did that led to this? There are so many questions before you get to do you?
Yeah. She dies in 2003 at the age of 104.
Wow.
49 years to the day after her husband.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel bad for him. He had 49 years of peace and quiet. Hey, if it's a short time, you can just, mark it off as a breather. 49 years. He got new hobbies and habits and shit, and that's all.
Probably a
getting
new
up there.
mistress up there.
Yeah.
Hey, it's till death does us part.
Yup.
Yep.
Them's the rules. I double checked with Jesus and everything.
Maxime Wigan, he gets arrested on May 10th of 45. In July that year, has all of his his property is seized, and he's placed under guard at a Paris hospital. Best of my knowledge, he never got any of that back. He's a witness at Marshal Pétain's trial, where he has some verbal sparring with Renault, who's actually the prosecutor in that trial. Yeah. Eventually, it takes till 1948, but he is eventually acquitted, and then dies in 1965 at the age of 98. Clemenceau will serve in the Constituent Assembly in the 40s and 50s. Dies in 1964 at the age of 91. Delaroque is placed under house arrest after he returns to France. Dies in 1946 during a surgery. Was meant to alleviate pain he was having from an old World War I wound.
Okay.
Basically going down as a traitor and all that, never living to see it become public knowledge about him being a member of the resistance and all that. Dude was still a fascist, but he was a patriotic fascist, and he was a fascist on the right side of history. As weird as that sounds.
We need to have a talk later. This was informed and confused.
So yeah.
I don't know. I'd say I'm still pretty confused about a few things.
Yeah, one of those weird things where it's like, the dude had some fucked up political views, but he opposed the Nazis. He helped fight for his country. He helped the British, fought for the resistance. So in France today, he's considered a generally like positive figure, maybe like in the vein of Churchill, where it's like, dude had a lot of fucked up views and did some fucked up shit, but he also led the war against the Nazis, so we can't be too mad at him.
Okay, I think current events show
well,
you can be
yeah.
exactly as mad as you want.
Didn't they take a statue of his and put it inside of a box?
Yes.
That says racist inside?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have my lovely little thought that I'm going to share again because the two mediums are separate.
After we get through this topic.
Yeah. We're almost done. And then de Gaulle's sister and her husband, he dies in 1956, age of 79. She actually gets awarded the Legion d'honneur, I think is how you say it, in 1975 in recognition of her resistance work.
Okay.
And dies in 1982, the age of 93. As I said before, we have no idea what happened to Crobot or any of the number of prisoners.
Of course not. He drifted back into a different disguise.
Yeah,
he had to continue his secret war against the forces of the Decepticons.
Yeah, it's assumed they all were okay and settled down somewhere,
Right.
But we don't know what happened to any of them.
People always disappear from history once their part is played.
Mm-hmm.
Crobot was placed in charge of the Allspark after the war, so he had business elsewhere.
Sure, why not? Kukovic moves back to Belgrade, compiles the list of all the notes he'd taken while he was at Castle Itter. He took really good notes and journals.
Yeah, a lot of them were writing the entire time they were there.
Yeah,
I bet his editor told him to cut it down
well,
too.
it's actually thorough enough that he.
You're not an editor.
The manuscript he comes up with is thorough enough.
I'm telling you, it's not your problem.
It's thorough enough that he actually provides copies of it to the French and West German governments to be
Okay.
part of like the official historical record.
Yeah.
He actually stays in touch with a lot of the VIPs after the war, writing to them and all that.
Good for him.
Yeah, he dies in '84.
Well, I mean, I have to imagine there's a certain bond after living through that. Even if
You
you
keep your
hate
pen
their
pals.
guts, if they showed
Yeah.
up at your doorstep at 3 a.m. with a bottle of wine, you're letting them in at least until the wine's gone.
A liter of red and white.
Yeah. Wrangel obviously died after the battle and the VIPs are sent away. Lee and his men take his body down to Virgil and give it to the local priest there, who gives him a proper burial. As far as I know, I think he's still buried down there. He has gone on to basically be an Austrian national hero.
Okay.
Not
Well
just
earned.
because
Yeah.
of this, but also for his efforts to protect the Austrian civilians against the SS retaliation.
Right.
And at
no,
the same
Good
time,
man to be a
Yeah,
hero.
no, definitely somebody worth remembering.
he has a street in Virgil named after him.
Nice.
So he.
Properly honored.
Yes.
See, I really
All right, now
name the last nice Martin Luther King Boulevard you were on. It always pisses me off that that's never in a white town ever.
anyways, Wimmer, the guy who's in charge of the castle,
Yes.
Mr. The guy, horrible, utterly
Yeah.
violent
The
human being.
SS guy.
He gets arrested a few weeks after the end of the war, and they finally track him down. His wife asked the VIPs to intervene on his behalf, despite because they had the letter or whatever, but
right.
it
but
didn't really
nobody
do anything.
believes
Yeah.
that shit from a
Or,
Nazi.
Given everything else he'd done, it wouldn't matter anyways.
Right.
You know, this
This
dude
may be
committed.
true, but this whole other pile of shit's true too.
Yeah, you have murdered a shit ton of people.
Right.
But actually, his wife asked the VIPs to intervene on his behalf. Some of them actually do. And however it plays out, whether because of that or with other reasons, he's released in 1949
Wow.
Wow.
and he goes to work as a common laborer on a farm near Virgil. It's just what he does for a living for a while. Eventually becomes a drunk, and his wife leaves him. Eventually, in 1951, he returns to his home in Bavaria and lives with his dad, and then kills himself the following year, age 50. So that's that guy's.
That's
So,
my second favorite way for Nazis to die.
That's what you call a self-solving problem.
Yeah, no. My first favorite is the shoddy hangings as a result of the Nuremberg trial. Just every single motherfucker
Yeah.
hitting their head on the way down.
Oh, yeah.
That's my favorite way.
Yeah. The Schrader, the VIPs.
Probably Schroeder.
It's
If
Schrader.
it's
It's a.
German.
There's no O's in there. There's an A.
Okay.
SCHRADER. Schrader. The VIPs give him a note explaining the role he played in the liberation of the castle. In his case, it works.
Okay.
He's actually held as POW for a couple of years, till 47, but then is released. Works as a bricklayer for a while, and then in 1953 is appointed to a position in the Interior Ministry in the German Länder or state of North Rhine-Westphalia.
Okay.
So serves in government, retires in 1980, and then dies sometime in the 90s. No exact date known. Kramers remains in the Army after the war, retires as a colonel in 67, gets a degree in business from the University of Philadelphia, and works as a financial advisor all the way to 2004. As of the time of the writing of the book, which was sometime, I don't know exactly, but at least prior to 2013, he was still presumed to be alive.
Oh, okay.
When the author of the book I read had done their research. So at least well into the 90s, probably into the 2000s, the guy may still be alive. He'd be over 100 by now, but he could still be alive.
Well, the one lady lived to
So
be
long as
like
the Rona doesn't get
104.
him.
And then Lee, who came out the
Yeah,
best
the
out of all this,
American.
the guy who had actually led the fight. While he was still in the army in Germany, on his dad's advice, oddly enough, the same time one of the first memoirs about this whole thing got published, he got his name put on the ballot for the Democratic nomination for county sheriff in a county in New York State. I couldn't figure out which one.
Oh.
He lost by a decent margin, but it's
Okay,
also the first time ever an American officer serving overseas was actually a candidate for political office back stateside.
Interesting.
Yeah, so... Yeah.
Followed up by Lyndon Baines Jumbo Johnson.
Yeah, although it was never official. I'm pretty sure MacArthur was polling for the Republican nomination for president in 48 when he was over in Japan, leading the occupation
I
forces.
think you're right.
Yeah. That didn't go anywhere either.
Yeah.
Anyways, he plays semi-pro football for the New Jersey Giants in a now defunct league, the American something or other league. Coached semi-pro teams, became a bartender, became a drunk.
Well,
Usually,
one kind of follows
yeah,
the other.
I mean,
Got divorced, purchased a hotel, took possession of the hotel, but lost it again because he wasn't able to make all the payments paying off the hotel.
well, drunk, so.
Got remarried, divorced again,
Well, drunk.
remarried a third time,
Well, drunk, so.
and then died in 1973 at the age of
I
54
take offense
of
to that.
asphyxiation, likely due to acute
I haven't
alcohol
been married
poisoning.
once.
Like I said, drunk.
Yeah.
So.
And to finish this all off, a few months before he died, a reporter did an interview with him about this whole thing and asked him a question, the answer of which kind of just sums up the whole nature of this thing. The guy asked him, how he felt about the whole Castle Itter thing, and he just said to him, well, it was just the darndest thing.
Oh, that is a great quote.
And that is Castle Itter. The Battle of Castle Itter.
You know, this has been quite the whirlwind you've taken us down today, Alan. This is so interesting and intriguing, and I kind of can't believe that some movie producer hasn't looked at this and gone, yeah,
They
this is
have.
the war story. Have they?
There are movies of this. Most of them are they're either small or foreign language movies. There is one where for the life of me I can't remember the name of the actor, but it's an actor that I've seen in other larger movies who actually starred in it. I can't remember for the life of me.
A lot of
who it was.
European actors are bilingual, so.
Right.
Yeah, but no, but and also oddly enough, two things I found. There is a Risk style board game of this thing,
Really?
with role playing rules and shit like that to be able to play out kind of like the Alamo, you would set up the battle.
I
of the
need to find
play
this
the Alamo?
now.
Bonus with Virgo,
I have
so
I
he
have it
gets shot.
bookmarked. I have the the companion guide for it.
Send me that link,
Yeah.
because
You know what,
I
folks?
need this
We
now.
have
Also, you like this? There's a Lego set of this thing.
Folks,
Yes!
folks, we have things to discuss amongst ourselves. This has been Informed and Confused. I'm Nick.
I'm Ben.
I'm Ellen.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Informed and Confused on Twitter.com. Go there. Talk to us.
Next time on Informed and Confused.
He was defending the world from an alien mist that was being emitted from an umbilical cord to the mothership in the Colorado mountains.
I guess technically he did have a grudge. It's just a batshit crazy grudge.
All of them?
All of them.
All of them?
All of them.